Kill me or release me, parasite. But do not waste my time with talk. There is much talk.
This video is a black pill to make. I'm never doing anything like this again. Probably. There are various things I've wanted to say as I've seen the Blue Archive community change and be dominated by outsiders with little to no investment in the game. I kinda miss the old Blue Archive community before the anime aired and all the tourists showed up. So I think I'm gonna make a meme video today and gatekeep a bunch of people. How effective it'll be remains to be seen. Remember when Doom Eternal came out and the entire Doom community was just overrun with all these idiotic normies screaming rip and tear, Isabel and Doom Guy, the wholesome combo. Look guys, I said the thing, give me likes now. Remember when normies found JoJo and every single JoJo post was just Kono Dioda, Speedwagon, Shiza. Oh, but that was 6 fucking years ago, so maybe we're not old enough to remember that. Oh, remember what happened to Bridget? You mean Brisket? Oh, remember what happened to the Metal Gear Rising fandom after Maxor made a video on it? 11 million views, and the community was flooded with normies who have never played the game, spamming memes from the video and shitting up the fandom. The Blue Archive community would never ever want that, right? That's why we attacked Maxor and pushed him away from making the Blue Archive video. That would just be so devastating to the community. I mean, imagine if we had to deal with normies who don't play the game, spamming Reddit jokes filtered down to them through YouTube videos and TikToks with hundreds of thousands of views. That would be so unthinkable. Every time normies get a hold of your hobby, they will latch on to the lowest common denominator of appeal and amplify it to the fucking moon until you have nothing left but brain-dead, surface-level discussion. Because that's what normies do. They see a 5-star gourmet meal made with pure soul and they get scared. So they have to toss it in a blender and twist everything into its simplest form so that they can stand to swallow it. And then they shit it back out on your plate and say, "That's what you like, right? It's pretty good. You have a bite too." Blue Archive finally came to Steam, and now it has a Steam community hub. Here you'll find a ton of clout chasing and shit posting. But there was an interesting thread which stuck out to me which got a ton of hate. Are tourists that bad, it asks. The answer is yes, absolutely. But you don't know the half of it, little one. The first reply that showed up for me was this really great video that explains the degradation of fandoms. Seems like it was made for tabletop games, especially Warhammer, and the uploader claims to be an old-ass man who's been dealing with this shit for 50 fucking years. Makes sense. I mean, when you think about it, the battle against tourists has raged since the beginning of time. Isn't that the reason the Orthodox Church exists? I think Warhammer and Blue Archive have a lot in common as far as community struggle goes. And this video perfectly describes Blue Archive's issues, so I'm going to paraphrase it and explain it. And we're going to try and remember the colors of each character because I'm going to call people those colors later. 90% of this video you're watching right now, by the way, was written a long time ago. So this little tabletop video isn't where I'm getting my thought process from. It only confirmed how I was already feeling. So step 1, the original fans play the game. They're colored in black. Step 2, the original fans include their friend, referred to as Green. He's a more casual fan, but he's respectful, so they allow him to stay. Step 3 is when Green does anti-gatekeeping by spreading word of the hobby around, which attracts secondaries referred to as Browns. Lol. Browns enjoy the surface level and superficial aspects of the hobby, filtered down to them through Green's social media posts, but they don't learn the proper etiquette of the hobby due to the lack of social pressure by not being outnumbered. Step 4, clout-chasing grifters, referred to as pinks, show up, using the hobby as a skin suit to virtue signal and beg for attention. They're not grifters in the sense that they make money, they're grifters in social credit. Step 5, the low IQ followers of the clout chasers, referred to as reds, arrive. The reds are similar to the pinks, but they're a bit more stupid and need the pinks to act as leaders and think for them. They're going to be the people in the replies of various Twitter accounts, just sucking them off. And at this point, the fandom is pretty much devastated as the majority of people claiming to be a fan are only doing so for social reasons, and the original players are phased out, possibly through a social shift towards frowning on elitism within the community or just insulting them for daring to care about their hobby being changed or just shouting over them. Blue Archive has no gatekeepers. 10 plus years ago, gatekeeping meant filtering tourists out of your discussion threads so that you could discuss your autistic obsessions in peace. When I was filtering secondaries over Toho like a decade ago, that's what it was, and yet despite the supposed community's massive pride in gatekeeping, where is the discussion about the game? All you get is culture war and porn. Yet that's not gatekeeping. This is literally the definition of a gatekeeping failure. The community has been reduced to the lowest common denominator of appeal to outsiders. People don't really get into Blue Archive because they like Blue Archive. Now they get into it because it's the based, whatever side of the culture war I'm on game. And so today I'm talking about the crimes committed against Blue Archive by its band of tourists. This person is right, even if they don't agree with me. The hobby has been changed. So it's time to hear some opinions from a cringy little cartoon rabbit VTuber.
This is the true face of heresy, one who would subvert our faith and incite rebellion against the High Council.
Our prophets are false. Open your eyes, my brothers. They will use the faith of our forefathers to bring ruin to us all. The great journey is...
This heretic, and those who follow him, must be silenced.
Their slander offends all who walk the path.
When I first got into Blue Archive, I was like, wow, this is great. It's like an old internet community. I don't have to hear about fucking pronouns or fucking gender ambiguity or current day California shit and then be gaslit for noticing how this isn't what we used to do. We all just enjoy the game in peace here. And then, after the anime aired, Blue Archive developed this massive online entourage of people very invested in virtue signaling over the game, but never actually playing it. This is just the fate of all games that get big, huh? What happened to the community I knew who loved the characters and discussed the game? All over X, it's just rage baiting, flame wars, gay ops. And on the 4chan threads, it's just completely AI-generated conversations. Literally every thread is 2 words, image, 3 words, image, 2 words. Oh, it's an image board. Yep, it's also a fucking discussion board. There wouldn't be a reply function if it wasn't. And yet there's zero actual discussion, just dead internet NPCs exchanging greetings. Then on YouTube, it's just really cringe degenerate jokes. Don't get me wrong, degenerate jokes were funny like 2 years ago, and I'm not against people gooning to any of the characters. But tourists have totally abused the degen jokes to the point where they became so unbelievably Reddit. They were funny when they were edgy, they're just not edgy anymore. I'm not saying you can't make dirty jokes, they're still funny when JP does them since they maintain a bit of tact with them. But the English-speaking side of the community is so fucking bad at it, they've become so increasingly unfunny the more and more tourists and bronze ranks spam them as their NPC dialogue. In the wrong spaces. I'm not against horny posting, I'm just against pushing it way too far and pretending like it's a good criteria to gatekeep on when it's literally the lowest common denominator of appeal and directly appeals to outsiders. There's also a difference between being able to love your waifu and appreciate sex appeal like a first worlder and then just going goon, 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 sex, 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 rape, 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 rape at the sight of a character like an Indian who just discovered Facebook. It's funny how you can instantly tell what part of the world someone's from just based on how they talk about Blue Archive. Yeah, I'm actually not for liberating your sexual right to act out in public. Araragi can do it because he's an anime character, he's 17, he's funny, he's a well-written character who has to face himself, and he gets what he deserves. You aren't. You're not a sexy vampire boy. You're a real person. And of course, none of this applies to me as an anime jackalope. Cunny pastas have just become classic Twitter virtue signals, low IQ engagement bait which people repeat endlessly to gain favor with other NPCs. Another classic Cunny joke. Daring today, aren't we? I humbly offer the eretic gold, ye cultured sir. And when they're not used to gain favor, it's a virtue signal to let people know not to harass you. Look guys, I'm based, you see? I said cunny or pregnancy or correction or whatever. I'm not listening to any gaslighting on this. If you were here from the beginning and you have a working brain, you'd notice that degen jokes went from funny off jokes to biblical verses which are repeated in ritual. And if your entire online existence is to repeat NPC dialogue, I can't really see you as human. Not to say you aren't human, but you're completely replaceable by AI at that point, aren't you? If all you do is repeat your learned words at any instance of a certain stimulus, it's basically a large language model. I'm not against gooning. I'm not against waifus. You know, for me, it's Professor Nia Nia. But I'd just like discussion around my video game to return to being more than just a virtue signal. And I know people are gonna say something like, you just have to join the discords. Okay, first of all, that doesn't fix the issue of the tourists overrunning the community because of the broken gatekeeping criteria. I'd rather they just be kept out of the community entirely than for me to be forced into a back room in my own community. It feels less like a VIP room at the club and more like the janitor's closet. I shouldn't have to hide away non-secondary discussion of the game. Second, I don't like cringy private communities. I much prefer public communities and stupid circle jerks. Like, would you tell the esoteric Elden Ring lore channels that, they can't be on YouTube without getting harassed by the based gameplay crowd? I don't think so. I think the lore channels, even the ones with the crazy conspiracy theories, get to upload videos without the other Elden Ring players complaining about it or calling them tourists for caring about the story. If I could describe the personality of the average Discordian, it's like their whole personality is a fortress. They're people so entirely on guard and so performatively edgy to protect their fragile feelings, but it's for nothing because beyond the fortress, there is no personality. That's their whole person. And then if you really press them, you kind of just find out that they're not actually capable of critical thought. They're just like a slightly spicier type of NPC. And I know the first thing someone's going to say about the performative sexuality is that, oh, it's just a gatekeeping technique. Really? A lot of people say they like gatekeeping, but end up pussying out once you elaborate. Let me tell you why gatekeeping is important. Gatekeeping is the immune system of the community. Those who are against gatekeeping want every community to get AIDS. If you do not protect your hobby, tourists will overwhelm it and twist it into something unrecognizable. Then it must be good that the Blue Archive community takes so much pride in its unapologetic gatekeeping. Yeah, well, actually no, because that's a complete facade. Because Blue Archive isn't gatekept at all. Maintaining the agenda is our top priority. When people say they like gatekeeping and want to filter tourists, what they really mean is that they hate antis and want to piss them off. They just changed the language a bit. Trolling antis is fine and all because antis hate you, but that's not gatekeeping and those aren't tourists. What? How can you say that? You see, people want to feel like they're actually doing something, like they're actually useful humans. So they wanted an enemy to fight and a virtue to signal. And so people get really overzealous about attacking antis, which again is fine, but it wasn't good enough because it just doesn't have enough virtue. If we want to feel really good about ourselves, we need to say that we're protecting the community. But hang on, antis are not really a threat to the community. They're just haters. Haters gonna hate, but what's the worst they can really do? Lie about your game and get more people to hate it? So they're doing you a favor and gatekeeping the game for you. Yet there's no such thing as filtering antis. They're not getting in anyway because they hate the game. So when you pretend like you're gatekeeping them, you kind of come off like a little dog barking through the fence. But people trick themselves into calling antis tourists because you get a lot more good boy points over filtering tourists and protecting the hecking community than you do just lying about the game to piss off people who would never play anyway. If your whole existence is to hate on antis and you've let them guide you to the point of pigeonholing your whole community into a very specific style of interaction that only exists as a reaction to them, who's really in control? Antis define this role for you and you play it like a good little puppet, always seething and engagement farming over haters hating. And so you end up with a situation where you create nothing of your own and you only exist in reference to your opposition. The Japanese and Korean communities have amazing fan animations, fan games, music, etc. And then the global community has stolen art turned into goon slop with AI dubbing and your occasional poorly animated SFM animation. You can easily expose this by asking any would-be gatekeeper one simple question: on what basis do we gatekeep? And then watch him have a meltdown. Go to any of the Cunny Slop channels and you'll find a fuck ton of this in the comments. All these subversive tourists swear by these videos as being the hardcore gatekeeping which the Blue Archive community should be proud of. So let me get this straight. Our most hardcore gatekeeping examples are where you find the most number of people admitting that they don't play the game and are only here for the community. That sounds really fucking familiar. It's almost exactly what happens in the final step of the degradation process. And so the number one appeal of Cunny Slop is to outsiders looking into the community. And we call this gatekeeping. Okay. So who are we gatekeeping? Oh, it's the blacks. I mean, the original players. They're just colored in black, see? The original players who dared to commit the crime of wanting their hobby to be focused on playing the game rather than just an excuse for superficial social exchanges with other NPCs. And so I see a comment like this and I just think, dude, I don't really give a fuck whether anyone is okay with the worst your community can do. The worst your community can do, really? So if we look at like the Undertale community, what was the worst they did? Like try to harass minors into trying to kill themselves? Well, that's the worst their community can do, so I guess everyone has to be on board with it or they must be a tourist. Yeah, that makes so much fucking sense. Oh, you're so smart. No, you can't just invite a bunch of normies into the community because they like one aspect of it. How about instead of the worst we can do, we just show them what we do? We play this fucking waifu game. Yeah, we like dirty jokes too. But what you've done is swapped out the criteria of gatekeeping from do you like Blue Archive and all of its aspects to do you like loli porn? I don't know. I don't think you're in the community just because you like one part of the hobby. Like, if you're like, yeah, I really like lolis, but Akemi, ugh. I think the developers should honestly be canceled for adding Akemi to the game. And you're not a tourist. Okay. Blue Archive is not the first game to have an outward fandom which heavily misrepresents the source material. There's My Little Pony, Undertale, Five Nights at Freddy's. I guess you could say the Deltarune fans are doing a great job of gatekeeping by making people hate their fandom, aren't they? Well, then maybe we should be looking up to them instead of looking down on them. And so now the Blue Archive community has been subverted by all these people who did not join naturally. They have a distorted perception of the game filtered down to them through social media posts, and they will enforce their twisted view the second that they have the majority. I don't care if they're totally based and cunny-pilled. Lolis are one small aspect, pun intended, of Blue Archive. To put it in culture war terms, you know how if you add one thing to your game which has the potential to be twisted into being woke, the social justice mob will take it and run with it. And if you don't properly gatekeep, suddenly Persona 4 becomes the game where Naoto is trans and Kanji is gay. And if you disagree, you get attacked. Let them push really hard and you end up with trans Bridget. Yeah, Bridget was always a bit gender non-conforming and Blue Archive has lolis, but no, that doesn't mean Bridget was transgender or really an important character at all. And no, Blue Archive's not actually about fucking lolis. Shocked Pikachu. So you fucking watch PV4 and tell me it's just a waifu game. Watch it and tell me Sensei's just a blank slate, and if you want to see him as a polyamorous child fucker, then that's heckin' valid. Watch the crowd reaction to Ari Aroharu and tell me it's just a gooner game. Lolis are great and all, but that's not what Blue Archive is about. This right here is what Blue Archive is about. Sensei represents something real, something to strive for. It's fine to enjoy fanon Sensei, but the idea that you can gatekeep on the basis that someone accepts fanon is fucking retarded, and the whole point of gatekeeping was to stop that. To stop people from pushing the lowest common denominator fanon bullshit and subverting the community. A Blue Archive is about responsibility in adulthood, but very importantly also about what made being a kid so fun. Blue Archive is supposed to remind you of what it was like to be a kid. That's why almost everything in the game is inspired by old anime and light novels, holding on to your youth while remaining a role model for the future generation. Sensei still has his model kits in anime after all. He isn't a jaded or manipulative adult like the villains are. And so if you're gonna open the floodgates for people simply based on the criteria that they jerk it to loli porn, don't be surprised when that's all the community is. And of course, the response to that is, hey, that sounds pretty based. Yep, I'm sure it does to the tourist who would like to erase the origin of the hobby and reduce it to simply an excuse to socialize. But it's actually not based for the original players, who got to see one aspect of their hobby get subverted and used to flip the whole thing on its head. And let a bunch of stupid people storm the community cock in hand. I'm not saying you have to stop all loli porn, I'm just saying learn the time and place for it. And don't subvert the whole community over it in a misguided attempt to filter antis who are never gonna play the game anyways. You already had a lolicon community where you could freely discuss and share dojins with other gooners. There's plenty of discords, there's Pixiv and 4chan, there's X communities, you don't need to subvert Blue Archive and then make it entirely about sex, just because that's how you engage with it. Let me explain the proper criteria for gatekeeping. Number 1, they have to play the game. How can you have a community around a game if the community doesn't actually play the game? How would that make any sense? And if you're not at least a somewhat dedicated player who has played the story and leveled up to say at least 75, why should I give a shit what you have to say about the game? So obviously, when gatekeeping, you have to gatekeep on the basis that they actually play the game. No one who doesn't play could ever be considered part of the community. But I'm not gonna go all in on, you need to be platinum rank and watch every story, blah blah blah. No, 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 no. Because as long as you're not subverting the game, you're totally fine. Even if you're a tourist, we can still get along as long as you don't try to make the community something it wasn't supposed to be. It's a video game, it's not that serious. You don't have to do things you don't enjoy. But if you're like getting a power trip over gatekeeping a game you only half-ass, or maybe one you don't even play at all, you're wasting your time, you're wasting my time. You should just leave. Number 2 criteria, they have to understand the game. This is important to prevent subversion. You could have a totally ideologically captured lunatic play the entire game and then project this absurd interpretation onto the game and story. And from within the community, they may try to spread this idea or share their backwards interpretation with others in hopes of convincing them to join under their false interpretation. If enough people with backwards ideas join the community, they will begin enforcing their interpretations on others, cause massive drama, and then flip the entire community upside down right from under it. The current state of the global community is the result of its excessive pride in something that doesn't actually exist. The whole thing's a clown show. Instead, it's like the community has this guardian class of warriors that doesn't actually play the game themselves, but they're more than happy to go fight the gatekeeping battles for us. Sounds nice, right? Until you realize, well, the Guardians have all the guns. They do these little pretend fights where they go attack people who never had any interest in playing the game anyway. Some retarded 16-year-old Limbus player on X or something. Then they constantly turn on actual players and attack them for stepping out of line when they say something in dissent, such as, Cunny's not as funny anymore now that normies say it. Just for something like that, they'll harass the guy and run him out of town. Then they go, yeah, he got gatekept. Well, that guy was level 90 and he loves the game and he played the entire story and he wouldn't change a thing about it. And you're like level 35, so on what authority? Imagine a Warhammer guy who only knows the For the Emperor memes going up to a tabletop player and saying, you're a tourist. No, you have to say the Emperor meme or you're a tourist. Well, I got bored of the Emperor memes like 10 years ago. I might still do it once in a while, but I play Nurgle now, and there's not much reason for me to do it. Plus, it's kinda cringe when outsiders do it. Nope, you're a tourist and not based because you don't repeat the religious words like I do. Our basis for who is allowed into the community is completely backwards. And we have this crazy gatekeeping mafia that pretends to gatekeep, but they don't actually play the game or even really care about it at all. Their only interest is getting into terminally online internet wars, often with children, by children, everyone, so many children. It's always just children. It's always just children all the way around. It's just so awe-inspiring to see the online community for what it is. This massive blob of people who are often completely aware that they and their circles don't actually play the game, but are still able to convince themselves that they're the core audience and should be gatekeeping the community from actual players. People like me who actually care about the story. Oh, big whoop. A game with a wholesome appearance actually has a caustic fandom of severely autistic children. It's a tale as old as time, isn't it? Yeah, I know. Normally I wouldn't care so much, but Blue Archive, the silly little mobile game, is kind of important to me. I really like it. But the truth is, yep, this is the inevitable state of all global online fandoms. The more normies show up, the more actual discussion around the game is drowned out. But I do miss the community that the global server used to have. Also, I've just never really seen subversion on this level where we all pretend like the game's gatekept while it clearly isn't. It's just really interesting to see how things have gone in this direction. One thing I've heard people say is, the Blue Archive community is so united. It really isn't. I think the fact that this video and Astryminal's videos exist is clear evidence of the contrary. You might think the community is united if you only watch memes where people repeat the same dialogue, but what does that really have to do with Blue Archive? Which is just a mobile game about raising your students. Yeah, I like lolis, but the Cunny memes are the lowest common denominator of content. Loli isn't nearly as niche as people make it out to be. Isn't Loli Kami Requiem the single most viewed VTuber-related video? And you don't need to know anything about Blue Archive to take part in those memes. A lot of people in the comments will tell you, yeah, I don't really care about Blue Archive, but I love the community. Personally, I'm not really one for appealing to people who don't actually care about the game. And for people who can't be bothered to play the story or don't like the gameplay or don't really care about anything besides the fan content, we've had a word for this type of person in English-speaking otaku communities for a long time. And that word is secondary. I mean, if you're only here for superficial reasons like fan content and you aren't actually passionate about the game, That's definitely a tourist. But even if you isolate the Cunny community, it's still really not united because they can't make up their mind about whether or not Yuri is bad or not. They're always arguing over it, nor can they agree what counts as a tourist. You'll see people ask the classic question of what is Blue Archive about? And someone will reply, it's about the responsibility of adults, blah, blah, blah. And then that dude gets hate for blowing the lid and not just saying the approved dialogue. Why, it's about child pussy, of course, and sex with children and all those things. And then they get into an argument about like political nonsense or whatever. I'm sure the community looks very united when you open the 1000th Piledriver Cunny Slop roleplay video and you see people posting the same copy pastas for the 100th time in the comments. But it's once you see them actually try to interact with each other, like on X, or actually try to talk about the game, that's when things really break down. It's not entirely unique, just basic gacha community shit. If you want to talk about united communities, wouldn't Project Moon be a better example? Okay, I played Lobotomy Corp in Library Runa, and I love them, but I never actually interacted with the community, and I don't play Limbus Company, so I would still call myself an outsider, and from this outsider perspective, they seem pretty united to me. People call them the Project Moon sleeper agents, and they always unite when it's time for some red mist memes or black silence memes or whatever. How often do I see dissent in the Project Moon fandom from the outside looking in? Maybe I'm wrong, but I haven't really seen it. Now, comparing to Blue Archive, if an outsider was looking in and they just assume all the Cunny Crusaders actually play the game, they might think, yeah, the community's united because they all repeat their religious mantras together. What they don't see are the people arguing over Yuri or telling people to post plat or getting over fights over which characters belong in the game. So if anyone's still watching this video and thinks they have an idea of what I'm talking about, they probably think I'm going to bring up the evil right-wing Nazi infiltrators. No, actually, I have political beliefs, but they're actually irrelevant to this. Because politics is just a skin suit for discourse in this community. Allow me to explain. Fandoms have always had childish and retarded discourse. But in the last few years, there was a recent wave which attacked the gaming hobbies. Ugh, now I'm going to tell the Gamergate lore. It all starts with the Tumblr exodus, which hits the internet. The online containment for all the most insufferable members of society ended, and they were all released onto all corners of the internet. Radical feminism, race politics, general wokeism, and communists go join the wider presence of all video games, anime, etc. And then once they arrive, they feel the need to police everyone there. It's all under the guise of making online spaces safe, of course. And these new Gestapo are jobless, so they can take roles as moderators for Reddits, and organize harassment campaigns. And with the help of corporate censorship of dissent increasing over the internet at the time, they were able to reform what was deemed appropriate political discourse. It wasn't just social media where this happened, it was literally everywhere, and it spread outside of the US as well. The video game industry, city council meetings, larger government, the left as they're often called, pushed really hard and pissed a lot of people off. And so many people on the other side will tell you it was these unjustified attacks on their hobbies of people who just wanted to play video games that woke them up. But all this happened a long time ago with a slightly older group of nerds. What we're seeing now, in my opinion, is a reincarnation of this event, which hasn't gone down exactly the same. Basically, many of the Blue Archive players are actually disgruntled MiHoYo fans, mostly from outside America, who have recently experienced a fandom overrun with ideologically captured and totally toxic groups. So the outcast MiHoYo fans got totally bullied and run out of the fandom by these groups, and now they're holding a serious grudge. And of course, when most of the toxicity is coming from self-proclaimed left-wing activists, they're gonna look towards the right as their weapon to fight back with. But the truth is, these people are not actually right-wing. They don't really know anything about policy or history. They have no idea what right and left actually mean. I mean, really, nobody does, but still. Most of them are really just too young to. All they really know is right stands against wokeism, so I guess I'm right-wing. All the far-right and Nazi posting is just a LARP. Most of these people are brown. What, you didn't know? Just check their usernames. Check what other languages they post in. They're just doing it because it's funny to haze people on the other side. The whole calling them bigots and Nazis is just a waste of time. People are what they are, and you're not winning any battles with name-calling. If you want to create some Nazis, well, keep calling people that, and they're eventually going to start to believe you. And looking around social media today, it seems like that's exactly what happened. These people have been bullied and made to hold their tongue for so long that a lot of them are trying to make up for lost time by being extra offensive. But most people arguing on both sides are children, and if they're not, they're like severely autistic. The anime character is photoshopped with a MAGA hat on. That's the same type of thing I would have done when I was 14, although we didn't have MAGA hats back then. So instead, it'd be something like a top nep hat. It's just typical teenager internet shit. So I'm not particularly concerned about the rise of the far right among Southeast Asian Zoomers. I mean, just look at this. Your average racist cunny crusader when a black man shares his opinion. The point is, it's all just a LARP. I mean, this whole account is just a LARP. I mean, really? Okay. Anyway, look, if Indonesia wants to start a new Reich, I implore them. So I was actually looking into this a bit more, and I found out Indonesia's colonization was actually done by the Dutch, and they had over 300 years of colonial rule. I'm sure that's common knowledge over there. But it got me thinking, maybe the whole Indonesian Nazi thing is actually, like, has a bit more to it. Maybe there's, like, certain Indonesians over there that genuinely believe that they have latent Aryan blood within them, gifted to them by the colonizers 400 years ago. That's kind of funny and a little bit sad, but unfortunately, it might disappoint them to find out that the Fuhrer heavily condemned any race mixing with inferior races and believed that you should all be enslaved. I do know that Filipinos kind of have a culture of like being edgy and like always just saying crazy edgy shit. I don't really know about the Indonesians, but with Filipinos, it's probably just like, it's cool to pretend to be like a Nazi. It's like, whatever, I don't really care. Because all I really care about is just, like, tourists and my video game community. This is because I'm a gamer before all else. Gamers first. So to simplify the last few paragraphs, Tumblr freaks pushed too hard and radicalized a bunch of people, but now the people who call themselves the other side have become just as insufferable and continuously harass people for not towing the line all the same. I don't care about people liking lolis or idolizing loli characters on their profile, nor am I at all concerned with a lolicon as a sort of genre. But it's when you get to the point that you're having lolicon communities and a lolicon Discord where all you talk about all day is how you love lolis, and you filter your friend circle based on whether or not they share your fetish. It's not a recipe for self-improvement, is it? And I already know the response to this is something like, well, why don't you leave people alone and let them enjoy their hobbies, you tourist? Because I was here first. Because we used to have a community that enjoyed the game, and I watched it become more radicalized and performative. I always lived by join the hobby, don't change the hobby, until all these people came in like, we like lilies, right? This is the lily game, and want to impregnate 9-year-olds, right, guys? No, this is Blue Archive. It's a gacha RPG. If you want to fap to the characters, that's fine, but as you would with any community, maybe don't try to bring that to the forefront of the community so much that you can't let a single non-explicit post go by without virtue signaling your sexuality. Not everyone is comfortable being publicly sexual, and because it's not an explicit game, normal people take precedent. Okay, jerking off is not a hobby, and your sexual preference doesn't need to be known to everyone you meet. Blue Archive isn't a masturbation community, it's a video game. Every community has people that like to jerk off to the material, but that's obviously not what the main hobby is. Yeah, basically, lolicons are an oppressed class who fear rejection, and so they self-insulate, creating echo chambers and furthering radicalization. You know, like cults. This video wasn't about that at first, but it's kind of what it became about. Look, imagine I took this video and replaced all of the stolen art with pictures of Jesus, and replaced all of the messages with praises of the Holy Son. It's a religion. Cunnyism is a cult. You see people cover their whole pages in cunning memorabilia and ritualistically repeat the Holy Scriptures. It's a religion. What is the difference? They repeat Holy Scripture, they form worshipping circles, they make tributes. In fact, it's a bit pagan with the way that they all choose their favorite goddess. And where is the funny? What, someone repeated scripture, so now you put it in a video paired with stolen art? What is the point? Is this your first time seeing horny posting? You had to make a whole tribute video over it? Surely not. What did Aoba do? Literally nothing. There's no joke here. It's just a ritualistic repeat of sexual desire. It's the most simplistic monkey brain interaction imaginable. See character, say correction. There's no actual joke. You'll never be as funny as the Japanese fans at this rate. This religion is just sad. It's a cult, and like all cults, the low-level members only know what they need to know. Originally, this video started as part of a Blue Archive Lies video where I would debunk common misconceptions about the game. Shit like Sensei turning into Gematria if he overuses his credit card, which is just completely wrong. But I ended up putting all the more lore-focused ones into another video because I realized some of these lies would be better in the form of a definitive diagnosis of the community. So now let's get into some specific lies that have been spread and used to subvert the community. The first one is this idea that Blue Archive gatekeeps itself, a statement dreamed up by the utterly deranged, to oozes with an ignorant hubris. This belief comes from the idea that because the game has lolis, that somehow means it will automatically filter undesirable people. Okay, let me ask you, can you think of even one example where that has ever worked? Shonen anime? No. Black Souls? No. Toho? Absolutely not. MiHoYo? Huh. You know who likes loli porn? Vosh. Nobody likes him, right? You can find plenty of members of the Skittle Squad who love lolis. Black Souls has lolis, rape. Did that gatekeep itself? Danganronpa has lolis, implied rape, murder, and isn't afraid to show off the character's underwear, unlike Blue Archive. Did that gatekeep itself? Remind me again how lolis are the ultimate gatekeeping tool. Actually, if I can go on a bit of a tangent on Black Souls for a second, I think it's really funny that people hold up Black Souls as a based, anti-woke game that's hardcore gatekept by its dark themes and explicit content. Meanwhile, Black Souls is basically just Koishi's heart-throbbing adventure for Zoomers, right? Well, of the kids who I knew who were into Koishi's heart-throbbing adventure a decade ago, almost every one of them either ended up gay e-dating, just went hard left-wing, or straight up transitioned. If you're one of those like super lolicon grift accounts, we can just check in on the Black Souls fandom today and I can easily find an account like this. This would be like your average Black Souls Cunny poster. Super duper based, right? We'll scroll down on his account a bit and we find out he's a big fan of what I can only assume is a transgender VTuber who does Kigu. It doesn't say transgender anywhere on their account, but I mean, looking at their neck, I can only assume. I don't mean anything mean by it. They've got a respectable number of views and followers compared to me. Much better channel. A much better model. Fuck. I'm totally jealous of this blonde-haired, blue-eyed Aryan princess of a say-so VTuber. But I guess that life just ain't for me. Am I being a schizo transvestigating people's profiles? Probably. Back to the lolis gatekeeping thing. Lolis only gatekeep from sparking individuals who immediately freak out at the sight of one, believing that the game sexualizes children, ignoring the fact that they're not real and they're not really children. I mean, I could have a deeper argument about that, but that's not what this video is about. Anyway, this in reality is a small group of people being hit by this filter. A group of people who are never gonna play the game anyway. All the people going, Diddy game, weird game, are never gonna play the game anyway. You don't need to worry about them downloading. And you're actively making the community worse to solve an issue that doesn't even exist. There's this crazy idea that it's those damn leftists that ruin all the communities. But thankfully, lolis will keep them out because they hate lolis. As if the worst of the worst on the left aren't all in on lolis as a path to lowering age of consent. If I remember correctly, didn't famous left-wing influencers get caught selling hormone therapy shit, literally covered in loli shota branding? Lolis aren't protecting the community for shit if wokeism or leftism is your concern.
Politics, how tiresome.
Okay, now let's talk about Blue Archive supposedly being left or right-wing. It's still crazy. I've never seen any popular media other than BA really grapple with vanguardist author-left stuff within a truly leftist scope. Now, this tweet is pretty old, and this guy pretty much already got dunked on. I think this guy here put it pretty well. Z is trying to do the whole media literacy shtick with Blue Archive now, lol. BA is neither right nor left. What you're experiencing is called motivated reasoning. It's honestly embarrassing. So the first time I read this, I didn't really think any of it. But now when I read neither right nor left, I think of something completely different. I don't think that's what they meant, but this tweet is true. But I still want to make a definitive argument against this idea to put it in the ground for good for when it inevitably pops up again. And I'm going to use this short fat otaku clip because I think he does a pretty good job. Yeah, I know he got into a drama with Kirsha. I don't really care. His old communist education videos are still pretty good.
Leninism, meanwhile, consists of Lenin's belief that a group of socialist intellectuals, known as the vanguard, had to control the state and re-educate the people with the proper political consciousness before any true socialism could appear.
And I'll just read straight from Wikipedia now. Vanguardism is a core concept of Leninism. Is the idea that a revolutionary vanguard party composed of the most conscious and disciplined workers, that's Sensei, must lead the proletariat, that's the foreclosure task force, in overthrowing capitalism and establishing socialism, ultimately progressing to communism. In simple words, what that means is people from the higher social classes need to become leaders and organizers for the lower classes in order for the revolution to succeed. So in this belief, capitalism ironically funds the revolution. It's kind of opposite to other communist thinkers. Like, I think Marx specifically said that it had to be a ground-up movement, and this is like the opposite of that. But anyways, that's not important right now. The point is, people will always read every story in a way that aligns with their worldview, but in reality, the tale of the downtrodden rebelling against a system rigged against them is a tale as old as time and used to justify literally every political movement ever. I also get the idea that this person didn't really beat Volume 1, or else they would know that the whole fight against Kaiser, the evil corporation, was just a red herring, as Black Suit's true goal was to capture Hoshino and use her to cause destruction. The Kaiser situation isn't even resolved to this day, and if anything, the characters seem to have just accepted the current state as the expected result of the actions of the previous student councils and the end of the Abydos Empire. Ironically, all the characters follow the rules and law as closely as they can, and Chapter 1, Volume 3 is all about navigating the rules. There's very little tearing down the system taking place. The only one who even floats the idea of breaking the rules is Hoshino, and even she considers it a selfish action. Although I won't blame them for knowing this part, as it wasn't in the game when this tweet was made. As a politically conscious American, I'm not afraid to call a game conservative when I see it. The Persona games, for example, are completely conservative. Oh, yes, they are. But anyway, Blue Archive is legitimately uncategorizable. It's a little like hardcore libertarian in the way that corpos can have guns and private armies, and so do the people, but this might be a lot easier to do in a world where it's actually really hard to kill people. So on one hand, Kivotos is heavily pro-Second Amendment. On the other hand, it's technically a matriarchy. Every region in Kivotos has its own society. There's an actual socialist school called Red Winter, and it's shown that they have a lower quality of life. Millennium is a utilitarian technocracy, and there's an entire chapter criticizing their rational scientist leaders' inability to make moral judgments. Yes, even the Christian school is flawed in their possibly justified but unnecessary prejudice towards Gehenna and Arius. The Blue Archive is one of those worlds that explores the strengths and flaws of societies without being so arrogant as to think that it has the right answer, which is absolutely one of my favorite types of stories. Another example of a story like this would be Kino's Journey, which is definitely one of my top 3 animes, probably. The only political messages I really remember from any of the main stories were authoritarianism bad, utilitarianism bad, not exactly controversial statements. I mean, wow. A military tactics game with an anti-war message. I've never seen that before. Isaku-san did say in an interview that he works for a company and didn't think he should insert his own philosophies into the story. But the way he worded it kind of seemed like he was just lying, or maybe he was implying that he can't help it regardless of whether or not he thinks it's right. Hello, future me here. So after doing some historical reading, I was wondering if I'm going back on the Blue Archive is not political thing. Okay, time to make some people angry. This might get its own video later. So various volumes throughout the game have vaguely political staging, as I said, but they don't really say anything controversial. Volume 1 is all about the fall of Abydos and the corporation's inability to sustain it after the government basically dissolved. Volume 2 is about the failures of utilitarianism. Volume 3 is about prejudice, dictatorship, terrorism, conspiracy, assassinations. But the first time I read Volume 4, it felt a little generic. Oh yeah, the evil girl does a coup to take power because she's evil. Seems a little cartoonish to me. Well, thinking about it more, how does this all happen again? Kaya is dissatisfied with the Republican government of DU's inability to make tough decisions or guide Kivotos in a specific direction. And so what does she do but rally her own party, as well as the Workers' Party, to destabilize the government, giving her room to stage a coup and establish her own totalitarian system with her as the supreme leader, all the while committing the unholy union of state and corporation. All of this is motivated by her goal of finding a superhuman, and she makes a point to concentrate as much power as she can into the most capable people she knows. and suddenly it doesn't seem so cartoonish anymore. The most important thing about this is the fact that Sensei denies her offer, but thinking back on it now, I wonder if a lot of the performative online fans of Blue Archive might agree with her. Sensei is the most capable person in the country. Does he not have an obligation to serve the state according to his capability? Does the state not exist to prioritize the best of Kivotos to build a better future? But Sensei refuses. Why is that? Alright, let's move on to another complete misunderstanding of the text, although maybe it's more like they never read it in the first place. In the BA universe, Cunny is illegal. What more can you ask for? This is an example of some of the dumbest people who have made it through our gatekeeping. Some people get really excited to bust this one out. It's very embarrassing and it's often in very broken English. That's why it reminds me of Bob's and Vagana. This isn't just a random reply, there's a lot of low IQ people often claiming this. It's cited like a Bible verse, a mantra, and that's because there's actually a source of this rumor, which is the Kivotos page on the Fandom wiki. Oh, it's on the wiki, so it must be true. That's right. But before we talk about that, it needs to be said that this is a stupid argument to make. Alright, so the reason it's okay to be attracted to a Blue Archive character is because they're not real. They're drawings. All your immoral fantasies are totally fine, as long as they're fantasies. It's fine because it's not real. So once you start trying to make legal arguments, you're just outing yourself. The cope is always going to be, it's a gatekeeping technique. Sorry, but lying about a game you don't play to other people who are never going to play it anyways is not gatekeeping. Alright, so here's the origin of this claim on the wiki. As implied by Kirno's relationship rank-up lines, specifically line 4, Kivotos has no age of consent laws, or perhaps more relaxed laws on the topic, when it comes to student-teacher relationships. Aha. Okay, so here's the actual dialogue. And yes, I'm using the Japanese version, even though the game is written in Korean, because I don't have a transcript of the Korean dialogue, and this line is very old. If it was wrong, it would have already been changed. So I don't know about you, but I don't actually know of anywhere that has specific laws that places limits between students and teachers. That's not an age of consent law, which refers to sexual relations. Love between students and teachers is not a crime anywhere that I know of. Kirino reminds the player of this because she's flirting with you, not because she's dropping lore that Blue Archive is actually anti-age of consent. Sorry, but our group of hardworking South Korean nerds developing the game don't actually want to fuck kids. And those overly excited autists genuinely trying to rationalize their fantasies into reality with the logic of, well, it'd be okay to fuck kids in Kivotos because it's illegal, should be sent to work camps. Laws are based on morality, not the other way around. Again, you're totally fine to wank it to Kirino or any other character in the game, but you really shouldn't be making legal arguments for it. It just looks really dumb. This is just an example of Kirino being a goofball and misguided people trying to extrapolate what they want to see to justify themselves. It's a complete illusion. This is such a common flaw among normies where they hear a claim from an authoritative source like the wiki and just assume, it must be true, it's on the wiki. So we really went from the lolicon is not pedophilia argument to trying to make legal arguments for some reason. I swear we're about one Ramadan away from, actually, I'm unironically based to fuck kids. If we're so good at gatekeeping, why can't we keep out tourists like this trying to push a lolicon down the slippery slope? Isn't this what you would call like Fed posting or like glowing? Remember what I said about it gatekeeping itself? This is what you get when you let it gatekeep itself. You can't just gatekeep on the premise of do they like lolis. That's not what Blue Archive is about. That's how you get all these like stupid people that seem like they do just want to fuck kids. That's where we got all the illiterate idiots who went on about 2 cakes and more cunny when Project KV was announced, when it was obviously made out of spite for Blue Archive. That was when Arsu Archive learned the hard way that the global players were completely brain dead after he was getting constant hate for being outspoken that Project KV was suspicious. But the global fans didn't know that Isaku-san recently left the team and announced a direct competitor within a few months. They didn't even realize the game had a scenario writer. Their brains are not advanced enough to comprehend things like dev teams and scenario writers. The Blue Archive is just a source of characters for masturbation to the secondaries, nothing more. Again, I'm not against people cooming to the characters. I'm not going to go close the gate on someone just because they want to coom. That's ridiculous. But I'm not going to open the gate on the basis that you want to coom either. People make and jerk off to porn of literally everything. People make porn of Nickelodeon cartoons. I don't really care. But Blue Archive is not an gay. It's an RPG. Cooming is irrelevant to determining tourism. Every character ever made has sex appeal of some kind. But if that's the only lens you see them through, well, it can certainly be funny to point out the different ways you could fuck whatever new non-humanoid Pokemon is revealed or whatever, but should that really be every single comment about the new Pokemon? The point is to keep the community reflective of the game itself, not a very specific brand of the fan content which appeals to a wider audience. People always want to see sexual fanfiction. This is not some unique thing to Blue Archive. Toho has a lot more porn and somehow is still able to keep its fandom's outward appearance in check. Now let's talk about the worst of where this goes. These are the comments from a Guitar Rock first video about some stupid Twitter drama about a cosplayer being outed as a minor. Is this gatekeeping? Gatekeeping is when you call yourself a pedophile. Yeah, who do you think that lets into the community? We're now coming on a real issue with real pedos trying to use Blue Archive to push lolicon down the slippery slope for letting real freaks into the community. Alternatively, these comments could all be from kids themselves. Is that not even worse, though? You know there are people soliciting CP on Pixiv right now? So, on Pixiv, you can find plenty of map pride posts and AI-generated porn. Much of it shifting outside of anime art style and getting a lot closer to looking like real kids. And in the comments of these posts, you'll find a lot of the same dialogue you'll see on Cunny Slap. Uwos and sobbing emojis. Well, investigate the profiles of these posters and you'll find IDs to message them on Session and Teleguard. Huh. Why would they need encrypted messaging apps if all the porn they like is already public? Pixiv also has these things called groups where members can start threads. It's not hard to find one like this with threads like this. Would you plap the real thing? And it's just dudes posting their fucking session IDs being like, yep, let's take a look at their profiles. Buy me things and I'll be your girlfriend. Oh, I should start offering that service. I play Overwatch and Genshin. Never, ever beating the allegations. Okay, let's look at this one. Trans lowly rapist. I'm a trans pedo girl. Very pro-contact, pro-misogyny. Femboy with a cock that throbs for lolies. Fuzz puppy fat hairy loser with a small dick who loves to fuck his own thighs. This guy is a Pippa avatar. Man, do I feel bad for Pippa. The creation of life is one of the greatest acts one can partake, consensual or not. The later is often more fun anyway. Know from experience. Literally, they're raped. Dude, these people are fucking damaged. I'm actually starting to feel bad for them. 21M, looking for a long-term relationship with a preteen. Okay, never mind. All these people. I need to go watch the clip of Jeffrey, what's-his-name, getting shot. And these are just the accounts stupid enough to have actual public descriptions. You'll find a fuck ton more with no description or anything, just lurking and commenting. God, do I hope this is a fucking FBI honeypot, but I'm not sure because you'll find messages in other languages besides English. FBI has no jurisdiction outside of the US, theoretically. And does anyone honestly still believe the FBI gives a shit about kids? After Epstein? They don't give a fuck, bro. They're the ones spreading it, if anything. So when I know they're real pedos skin-suiting as humans, speaking in the same way Cunny Crusaders do, and then I start seeing comments like this, I just wonder, does he know? How much of this is connected? Someone needs to draw the fucking line before we start letting actual pedos into the community. Unless, of course, this was all part of the plan to subvert the Blue Archive community into some kind of pedo haven. Or are they antis using astroturfing tactics to try and take down the community? Or maybe this is all a glow-op. Does it fucking matter? What the fuck are we doing? This shit needs to be stopped before it gets worse because when the first high-profile Blue Archive player gets outed as being an actual pedo, it's not gonna be good. And then there's gonna be a ton of clout-chasing glowies going, based! Now that the Blue Archive community has been confirmed to have real pedophiles in it, the game will be gatekept for another 10 years, hurrah! That's right, because gatekeeping is when I call myself a pedophile. Because we're now past the point of it's not happening and are entering the, no, we are pedos and that's a good thing. At some point, I think the community got tired of antis accusing them of being pedos, so they stopped trying to defend themselves, and then unfortunately, real pedos saw that and thought, this is a safe space for me, isn't it? Remember how being accused of being a Nazi was like a bad thing and it was so serious? And then the accusation got thrown around so easily that it lost all of its meaning, and if anything, being a Nazi is a cool, edgy thing now. Yeah, let's not let that happen with the word pedophile. Because I already see people trying to rationalize pedophilia as a good thing in the comments of BA-related videos. I mean, just look at the Kirino dialogue example. There are people saying like, oh, well, if it's in Kivotos, it's fine because it's legal. It shouldn't matter whether or not it's legal. Once you know about the real pedos on Pixitive soliciting CP and start seeing comments like this, it starts to put things in a new perspective. Lolicon is fine and all because it's not real. But when we create a hypothetical and ask, would you fuck the characters if they were real? And people start answering yes, well, we've got a problem now. I don't really care even if someone is a major gooner and they love all kinds of feral furry porn and fucking toddler con or whatever. All that matters is, if it was real, would they do it? And if they don't have an immediate visceral reaction at the thought, they need help. If you really can't say you'd refuse if given the chance to bang one of your students, you're a failure of a sensei. If you're unable to understand that yes, this is your fetish, but it's still wrong and you shouldn't act on it, and instead need fear of law enforcement to stop you, you might be a psycho. You're not protecting the students, you're hurting them. I get that people get horny and want to masturbate, but you really should not be in that headspace all the time. For your own safety, you need to stop going down the goon hole before it's too late. I mean, we've got repliers like this. Take a look at this guy's profile. Not making any accusations, but statistically speaking, what do you think are the odds are that this guy would touch kids if he had the chance? He visually matches the description of those Pixiv profiles from earlier. As far as I know, people who talk about Blue Archive on X get outed as pedos all the time. But it's small world stuff, so no one bothers to archive any of this. I heard there was this guy named Satomu on the Twitter fandom who got outed as a pedo recently. And then there was a lot of low-functioning autists pretending not to be friends with them to save themselves. Rage baiting is when you pretend to be a pedo to epically troll people who don't like pedos, apparently. Joke's on you, I was only pretending to be a pedophile. Yeah, likely story. Again, I'm not super knowledgeable about this Twitter drama shit because honestly, all these people are below me and they're below you as well. You could go ask them for more detail. See for yourself how concise these retards are. The thing is, it should not even be possible to be associated with pedos this way. If one of your friends got outed as a pedo, you're in the wrong crowd. Or maybe that crowd reflects you. And I value my sanity too much to subject myself to those circles just to gather evidence. But we know, thanks to the Mr. Cynical event, that among social grifter types online, plenty of pedophiles do exist. Mr. Cynical was one of those never shuts up about lolis type guys who made an entire video defending lolicon as not pedophilia, and then literally ended up getting himself outed as a pedo via a leaked Discord call a few years later. Look, if you like lolis, okay, I don't care. But if you only joined Blue Archive for the lolis and make them your entire personality, yeah, I think we have reasonable grounds to assume that you need your hard drive checked. If you don't want people calling Blue Archive the Epstein Diddy game, then start gatekeeping the retarded secondaries who want it to be exactly that. Either that or stop seething. Honestly though, I think a lot of people complaining about this aren't actually offended by it. It seems like it comes more from a jealousy angle, like, grr, those hypocritical Americans are insulting us for being pedos while having their own pedo problems. Why do only the Americans get to be pedos? It's not fair. If the whole Epstein Diddy label didn't really apply to you, then why even be mad about it? It doesn't bother me because I know it's not true. I'm not really concerned with what aunties think because it doesn't affect me. But if I was really serious about wanting to clear Blue Archive's name of this misrepresentation by aunties, I would do just that, instead of seething about the aunties themselves or playing into it. It just seems suspicious. So what? Do I think they're all pedos? No, absolutely not. I think a lot of the Cunny posters are just overly excited coomers for something that is fictional. But I'm showing you this because lolicon pedos do exist. Shocker, it's not some myth as much as they like to pretend it is. The slippery slope is real, and lately it's harder to tell who is who. For example, now when I see a post like this, it says, "Send Cunny please." And then I see replies like this. What do you mean DM? Loli porn is allowed on Twitter. You shouldn't need to DM anything. If you wanted to share porn with your friend, you could just send it in the replies, which other people did. It just seems suspicious. I'm telling you, it's unironically just like one of my From Software games. The more insight you have, the faster your frenzy meter fills up. I have way too much insight to just assume they're just innocent little Woollycons sharing hentai. Whenever I see suspicious shit like this, or Arabic or Southeast Asian usernames getting overly excited thirsting over lolicon, I just get one-shotted due to my forbidden knowledge gained through Pixiv and crime statistics. Okay, time for me to get political again and let off some steam, because honestly, this video's just turned into a multi-hour yap session of me just thinking about random stuff that bothers me. I could easily go in depth on this, but I'm just gonna try and keep it short. So I think it's generally not a secret that a lot of the lolicons you see online identify themselves as a right-wing. Well, at the same time, I've seen a lot of people who identify as right-wing fervently defending age gaps. Big ones, not like 10 years, like 30 years. I'm actually not for 20, 30-year age gaps for anyone fresh out of high school. No one really is, because the more you widen it, the more people go, before they reluctantly agree and say, if they're both adults. Where does that hesitation come from, I wonder? And people always go, well, if they're both happy, what's the issue? If they're both happy, what's the issue? Is that really a right-wing argument? Okay, let me just put up the picture of Rome burning down. You can ask me, how does this affect you personally? That's a good question. Like, how does legalizing gay marriage affect you personally, you know? I think we should just legalize all the taboos, because as long as people are happy, I'm sure there'll never be any adverse side effects, because slippery slopes aren't real. No, you need at least a few years in the workforce to be properly broken and transformed into an adult. After that, fine, whatever age gap you want. But in America, you can't even be trusted to buy alcohol until you're 21. Yet you can fuck old dudes. Who set up those laws? Oh yeah, the old dudes. That makes sense. No 18-year-old chick, at least in America, needs some nasty 40-year-old sugar daddy. And this is a shame on both of them, both the whore selling herself to old men and the perverted old man. You're both a stain on my plan for utopia. Anyway, the right rejects the left's anti-pedophilia arguments of power imbalances. Okay, I can understand that. But lately, they've failed to put forward an argument of their own to replace it. All the while, you have all these definitely, totally right-wing guys justifying the most taboo of relationships with liberal arguments. It's getting to the point where I could totally see a right-wing movement towards lowering the age of consent popping up, and people are gonna gaslight and say, no, there's no way. That's what leftists do. They're the ones grooming kids. Sorry, but I've just got way too much insight to fall for that. Look at what people do, not what they say. And think about how many times it's not happening, or that would never happen, has shifted to it is happening and it's a good thing in your lifetime. I really don't think pedophilia is a left-right issue. If 20 to 45 is okay, which would be like me and my dad, how about 18 to 58? Okay, let's go a bit further and say 16 to 58. What's the issue? It's only a 2-year difference. Well, the white pill here is that I think most of the people talking about this online are not actually American. Thank God. If that kind of movement does happen here, I can only hope that people start to actually get serious with their Second Amendment rights for once. America does have people like that. You know, they run our country. Maybe we should do something about that. But I think any real American father is sitting on his porch with his shotgun, waiting for that boy to bring his daughter back by 8 p.m. And if that dude is his fucking age, then he's getting his brain splattered on the lawn. Okay, let's shift away from the whole pedo thing, because I actually don't think the whole community is a cesspit of nefarious pedos who want to abuse the students and unironically think Kirino was telling them there's no age of consent laws. That's just the worst of where this goes, but there's actually a lot more layers to this. Bro watched it in class. Bro is cooked. This is definitely a child. Nice job hearting a comment that's actually from a kid, you retard. I think I'm dead. This got recommended to me when a girl looked at my phone. This seems like a fucking middle schooler. You're just gonna have to take my word on this one. This guy had 18 years old in his bio, but I guess I didn't screenshot it. Blue Archive is a few years old now, which means they were a minor when it came out. I'm not throwing shade at this person at all. I'm just using them as an example. A lot of minors around Blue Archive. And with minors comes a low intelligence discourse. Here's another one. I actually like this guy's videos. He's a smart kid. But if he's 18 now, then when Blue Archive came out, well, okay, look at this. I was watching this Mari clip and I saw this comment. Now, I'm an inquisitive person, so when I see an XD out in the wild, I might click on their profile to learn more about them. And what do I find out but that he's your average cunny poster? So first of all, pronouns in bio. Second, his account is only 3 years old. And he set his location to Japan, but we know that's definitely a lie because he's just a weeaboo. Take a look at one of his uploads, and what do we find but him autistically arguing, likely with other children? These people have to know each other or something. These people don't just find videos like this by accident to argue with. Like, who talks like this besides kids? You tell me. 3-year-old account, types like that. This person is very, very likely around 14. Here's your based Cunny poster, bro. It's either a middle schooler or a severely autistic man. Either way, I'm pretty sure this kid is cooked. I was a kid on the internet too, but I never did shit like this. And the kids I knew who did never grew out of it. They just ended up being a burden on their parents. Look, here's another one. It's not an explicit artwork. It's actually Yuri harem art with Hina. But scroll under it, and what do we find but Uwo Cunny and the ritualistic repeat of headcanons? Take a look at this guy's profile, and we see it's a kid. Why is it always a kid? Everyone assumes everyone else online is an adult, but these are not always adults. A lot of the time, they're kids. I had weeb friends like this when I was a teenager. I remember this is how they act. There are a lot of kids into Blue Archive, like a fuck ton. Most of them are not going to admit it, but a lot of times you can tell just by the way they talk. It's obvious to me because I remember I was an anime-obsessed teen on the internet once too, and I still have many friends from those days. We're all adults now, but I know 10 years ago, we were sharing things that we shouldn't have been. But the shit online today is at another level. And these are just the ones that actually put their age on their profile. There's a lot more that don't. Check enough people's profiles and you'll see the pattern. I think many people in my age bracket have yet to realize that there's a new generation of kids that can use the internet. A very different internet than I grew up with. Many of the worst offenders of Blue Archive tourism are just stupid kids, expressing their Zoomer humor. One of the lessons of Blue Archive is to be nice to kids. So I'm sorry, little ones. I feel for you, really, and I'm worried about you. But basically, in some cases, they're just Zoomers and they're extra confident in their lolicon identity because being actual kids themselves, no one can say that it's wrong for them to be attracted to characters their age. Although I can't tell them that too much porn is definitely bad for them. I believe this is how they're thinking because it's similar to how I was as a teenager. Although I was never quite this cringe, but I would have had a similar way of thinking. When I was 12, I was in love with Kuroko Shirai. You know, the lesbo loli from Railgun. Call me groomed by anime or whatever, I don't care. And yep, by around age 14, I had a social media profile, all centered around my waifu where I would say retarded shit. So whenever you see some kind of NPC account like Hina Lover number 3421, you just know, yeah, that's probably a high school kid. Or at the very least, somebody with a high schooler's brain. The reason they're like this is because of a feedback loop in society. A lot of these young people wanted to goon to MiHoYo games, but they got bullied out of the community. Now they heard that Blue Archive is a base cunny-pilled game, and they're not actually going to play the game because Blue Archive doesn't have the button-mashing gameplay MiHoYo games are known for, or the flashy art style. So instead they just live in the comment section and Twitter spaces, feeding off of whatever scraps of content are filtered down to them through the slot merchants. But the societal feedback loop is going to continue, as people on the other side of the issue who just want to enjoy Blue Archive as an RPG, and not merely as a porn genre, will be emboldened to be extra anti-lolicon, since they are now the counterculture. And so the cycle continues. Besides many of them being kids, you might actually notice another, let's say, demographic difference that has a major correlation with being a secondary, but we'll talk more about that later. I hate to generalize though, these are individuals, each with their own delusions, and when you interrogate them, you'll find that they're absolutely not all the same. When people start whining about shit like this, I can't help but wonder, how did such a good game manage to attract such stupid fans? But I guess that's an age-old question, isn't it? Let me fix that for you. Banning people for posting porn of their not porn game. Yeah, no shit, they're not gonna let you post fucking porn in the official Discord. Does that seriously not make sense to you? And yes, this post is from 2021, but you can still find people seething about this to this day. Don't be shy, tell them the truth. You didn't get banned for being based, you got banned for being an autistic I'm not against gooning at all, obviously. People are going to have perverted thoughts about the characters. I happen to be a big fan of Professor Nia Nia. But you have to respect that not everyone wants to constantly think about sex. Nor is that even considered in the criteria of being a fan of the game. Even with the uber autistic communities like the bronies, clopping was something they all acknowledged and probably participated in on the low, but it wasn't their main point of discussion when it came to the show. Japan understands this, and the JP otaku are able to separate 18 plus fan content from the actual game. They understand that sexual desires are selfish and shameful, and even their brand of dirty jokes acknowledges that. Japan doesn't have this same obsession with acceptance and tolerance that leads us to take pride in our fetishes like here on the global internet. It's not to say that they can't have them, they just aren't like prideful about it. Does anyone remember when gay people would get a ton of hate for making their sexuality their entire identity? That was like the classic thing most normies cited as their main complaint when it came to gays. At least in the US, it was common to hear normal gay people are fine, but people who make it their whole personality are annoying. Eventually, that way of thinking got phased out for being a microaggression or whatever. And at some point, criticizing the gay personality became taboo. And where'd that get us? People are more homophobic now than they've been in decades, as young people now have only ever known a world where heavy social restrictions on criticizing certain types of people were in place. And unfortunately, the most degenerate of behaviors became presented as the core of gayness, rather than just letting them be a group of people who happen to be more happy dating the same sex. It had to be about degeneracy. It has to. And so, what is this new lolicon culture? Your sexual interest is your entire personality? That's kinda cringe, bro. Imagine meeting one of these people in life. It's like, what are your hobbies? Jerking off. Yeah, everyone jerks off, retard. That's it. The only interesting thing about your personality is your favorite porn genre. I kind of don't want to shake your hand all of a sudden, but I'd be willing to whip you though. Anyway, Blue Archive is not a porn game, and the community should act to accurately represent the game, especially to properly gatekeep. That means maybe being a lolicon, but also being responsible and well-spoken adult. This ain't Rants. This ain't some Edo gay slop developed by some horny nerds and sold at Comic Con 20 years ago. No, I'm not calling Rants slop. I know it's totally peak. I'll try it, just not right now. But this is Blue fucking Archive. It's a mobile game on the Google Play Store, not in Edo gay. You know what else has fan service and lolis? Blaze Blue, Grand Blue, Nikkei, Azure Lane. Does that mean I'm posting porn in official Discord servers? No! I swear to God, you would need to be less than 80 IQ to not be able to make that connection. That is inappropriate. And even lower to spend your free time spamming the Discord of a game you don't play. When people need common sense like this explained to them, that's how you know we are in the clown world. The Nikkei Discord server never had these problems, neither did Azure Lane. Why is it that Nikkei and Azure Lane can have fans that behave themselves? Because they never developed this hubristic idea of, if he likes lolis, he must be based, which drew in all of these virtue-signaling idiots who can barely speak English begging for the approval of the based and superior Nihonjin. Then they go, ooh, Cunny, look guys, I said the based words. I'm cool, right? No, actually you killed the joke. I can't fucking believe it. You actually made Cunny jokes Reddit. If you told me in 2016 that Cunny would become Reddit, I would tell you that's less likely than me turning into a loli and swinging my ass on YouTube reviews. Grand Blue has a ton of lolicon fans, but the community's average IQ seems to be about 20 points higher than Blue Archive's, so they don't have these issues with virtue signaling and clout chasing. I've seen official Helldivers tweets get ratioed by Helldivers porn. I don't think that just because the porn is more popular than the game itself means that the community should be about that. Those are just what we call tourists. There's a reason why Comic-Con is a doujin event. Doujin refers to self-published works, not official. You don't confuse official and doujin works. JP understands this so fucking well, but for some mysterious reason, foreign populations just seem to be utterly incapable, at least on a wide scale. Some people say, actually it's rated M, so it's for adults, which apparently makes all adult content a core part of the community. Okay, well, we can kick all the kids out of the community then, right? Including you. And then get the Cunny Slop channels to post their viewer age statistics. Oh, and guess what? Porn games are not rated M. And Blue Archive originally had a T rating before being targeted by the Korean rating board, which very famously led to the Korean players getting the whole department shut down for corruption. Funny how when Blue Archive is misrepresented as an adult game in Korea, The Korean players go apeshit and defend the game's honor. Meanwhile, global fans beg for the game to change and become more adult to appeal to them. Are we noticing yet? Nexon's initial response was to release a second, censored version of the game with a T rating, doubling down that T was always the game's target. And anyone with a brain knows that this M rating was targeted because Nikkei and Azurlane both have T ratings despite being much, much more explicit. Nikkei's rating doesn't even bother to include blood, but Blue Archive has to do it. I guess because it's in the beginning of the game. Oh yeah, Blue Archive is more sexual and violent than Nikkei and Azurlane. Totally. In Azurlane, the live 2D interactions involve undressing the characters. In Blue Archive, it's pinching Fubuki's cheeks. Fucking your students will always be a fanfiction. It's a headcanon. You're free to have all the headcanons you want. Actually, I like reading fan-produced stories and animations. But I wish the community would accept that the fan-produced porn is not reality. And don't go looking into the text trying to prove, no, the devs are actually based in pedo-pilled and totally intend for you to abuse the students. You just have to read them between the lines. Most of you guys can't even read in the first place. Cooming fantasies should be kept to a minimum in primary discussion around the game. This is the whole reason gatekeeping exists, to keep out people who don't actually care about the game. Like safe, horny tourists who only want to virtue signal for clout about how they want to fuck whatever character is deemed acceptable to like by the wider community, and to keep out people like the MiHoYo community and the My Hero community who act as if their headcanon said everyone is gay is law. And to keep out people who harass the devs and demand changes to the game and community to fit their distorted worldview. Let's read this guy's desperate attempt at communicating in English. Nah, you tourists can't do a thing. As people said, Blue Archive gatekeep itself. With tons of lolis and fan service on top of the devs themselves is also uwoing the lolis as much as the player. I don't think you guys can stay for long in this game, lol. I don't really remember who he was replying to, and I don't really give a shit. I just think it's so funny how low IQ, how fucking stupid these people are. He types like a fucking Ed Eddie character. But anyway, there's this really common cope from tourists in the form of projection onto the devs that they're actually as sexually obsessed as they are. They're not. Each of the devs is their own individual person. The devs are adults that work a corporate job at a billion-dollar company. Some of them are happily married. I'm sure they're lolicons and gooners, but they understand what does and doesn't belong in the game. If they just wanted to write pornographic stories, they would work at an eroge company. Instead, they're at Nexon writing wholesome stories with tasteful fan service. Lolis are not their entire life, and it shouldn't be yours either. I honestly find it really hard to believe that these guys are spending a significant amount of their free time masturbating. Usually corporate employees like this just don't have time for that shit, and the idea that they did all this, created this whole world and all these characters, in this amazing story, just so you could jerk off to the characters, it doesn't make sense. It's totally unnecessary. The devs have stated so many times that their goal was to create a bright world that combines a slice-of-life setting with action and drama. But unsurprisingly, people online are generally too fucking stupid to comprehend enjoying things for such simple reasons. How can you play this? There's no porn. They keep advertising the game as slice of life, tactical RPG, school setting, anime, epic. They have never ever advertised the game as a dating simulator or as an explicit game. Of course there's fan service, that's all secondary content though. Fan service is service to the fans. Of course the devs are going to appreciate all fan art of their game. It's a manifestation of the community's love. They design the characters beautifully so they can be appreciated. I remember before Nier Automata came out, Yoko Taro asked people on Twitter to make a collection of fan art featuring 2B's ass and send it to him. But what do you think? Is jerking off to 2B's ass all it takes to be a Nier fan? Is that all Yoko Taro created Nier for? As a way to make porn? I will 100% admit that 2B is what initially caught my attention and eventually led to me playing Nier. But the reason the game was so good wasn't just because of 2B being hot. There's a major difference between something like Nier and Senran Kagura. Both have big booty bitches, but obviously the appeal of the games aren't the same. Even though series like Blue Archive, Hyperdimension Neptune, A Certain Magical Index might look like Senran Kagura at moments because of the fan service, they're definitely offering a lot more. Recently, Official Artworks 3 came out and revealed some early made designs for the Saiba sisters. The design was rejected because it didn't fit the tone of the event. That's not to say it was a bad design or anything, but I'd say it contradicts the appeal of which the game development department already has. I've said this before, but one of my favorite things about Blue Archive is that the characters look like they dress themselves. It's not like Nikkei where everyone dresses like a whore and no one acknowledges it, or like a MiHoYo game where everyone has these crazy ceremonial looking outfits that look like it would really be a pain in the ass to put them on and take them off. The Blue Archive students look like they could actually put their own clothes on, and it really adds to the immersion. And when they get alts, they fit. Yeah, I could see Wakamo wearing that as her swimsuit. And yeah, if Hina had to wear one, she'd probably go with the school swimsuit. The After School Sweets Club gets a collection of band alts, and the outfits were all canonically decided by Yoshimi. And then the character who actively undresses herself has a reason for doing so and is one of the most interesting characters in the game. The devs understand what fits the characters. They don't just go all in on sex appeal without thinking about other aspects of the game. Everything is taken into consideration, as evident by just how many revisions many of the characters went through. We also know from interviews that the characters are indeed written before they're drawn. That is to say, a character's personality and role is decided, and then relayed to the artists who need to draw something that fits the role. So no, the devs aren't just going all in on sex, goon, 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 goon. It was Mod Sensei from the RC official stream that was known to uwo in the chat. He's not a dev, and uwoing is a far cry from screaming cunny and impregnation at the mere sight of a character in a wholesome context. Please don't try to force your projections onto them. Bringing up Dorontabi is a really common move from people who can't think for themselves and can only repeat talking points relayed to them by other tourists. Dorontabi was hired to create a single piece of artwork for the game. And this was before he was outed as being a big fan of child models and using them as a reference for his art. This really ain't the guy you want to be referring to as a lord. Unless, of course, you think indulging in child modeling and using it to draw loli porn is based, in which case, let me know and we can find a work camp for you. Look, here's another example. Again, Dorontabi is not a dev, and he definitely did not invent uwo. Fucking Zoomers, I swear. They think the world began in 2012. That's when it ended. Anyone who demands, we need a marriage system like Azure Lane, or they need to add more explicit scenes to the game. You're a tourist, you can leave. Join the hobby, change the hobby. It's that simple. If you want that, you can play Azure Lane. You can read dojins and self-insert. You don't need to change someone else's game to appeal to you. After all, even if the devs did cave and change the game for you, you still wouldn't be playing, as tourists are not loyal. People are gonna lie and tell you, oh, they're just jokes. Well, you can ask them, are you joking? No. They're gonna say no. Basically, it is a joke until it's not. It's like, haha, Raiden and Yay Miko are gay. It's a joke, right? Right up until the moment you're getting harassed if you disagree. Here's an argument I heard recently that I thought was a bit funny. So, words change with meaning over time, and the word tourist means something else. Okay then, so I'm just expected to accept your new distorted version of the word tourist? Just like I'm supposed to accept the new definition of woman or gender? This is literally just admitting to the subversion that these words were used to gain favor and support through virtue. You know, filtering tourists is a virtue. Everyone loves filtering tourists. That's how you protect the community. But then you subvert the meanings of the words so you can apply it to whatever you want, while tricking people through misleading language into letting you carry their support over to the next target. Whether you realize it or not, that's what you've done. I don't really care if most people you know play the game to some extent. You don't know what a tourist is. A tourist is someone who comes into your country just to see the sights. You might let them in because their money is good, and because you want other people to be able to appreciate your country. But obviously, they don't have a real understanding of your culture, and they have no say. If they try imposing their values on you, you deport their ass. Blue Archive is a free mobile game. It's literally the absolute lowest barrier to entry in today's market. You don't even need a passport to get in. So I don't really give a fuck if you log into the game once in a while. It's not impressive. I already know a lot of people do that just to avoid the cognitive dissonance and tell themselves they're definitely not a tourist. A tourist is not a retard on Twitter hating on lolis. We already had a word for that. It was anti. Fuck antis and fuck tourists trying to manipulate language to protect themselves. Tourists get filtered, but antis don't need to be gatekept. They filter themselves. Antis hate you and want what you love to be destroyed. They're not going to try and join the hobby. Tourists are the ones who want to join the hobby so they can subvert it and are arguably more dangerous. Look, being a tourist is whatever. I'm not gonna go all like, grr, I hate you for not being into every aspect of my hobby. The reason I'm crashing out over it is the gaslighting and subversion from tourists trying to flip the community upside down to appeal to them. If you only like waifus or whatever, that's fine, we can still hang out. Just stop being fucking autistic and attacking actual players while being a secondary. I'm gonna deport you. I see comments like this all the time. By the way, this conversation was fucking stupid, so I'm not gonna talk about the rest of it, but let's talk about this little section. It's different. There is no beating around the bush. Our community is comprised of a lot of senseis who enjoy 18 plus content. This is a reflection of the devs themselves who are seen at Comic-Cons and other venues where 18 plus content of BA is hosted. Basically, BA is a NC-17 game, but it's very much made for adults. And I did reply to this guy because it's just not accurate. I'll just read what I said. Blue Archive is rated Sero B in Japan, 12 plus. And after the Korean rating board attacked the global version of the game, they released a second version of the game just to get back their lower age rating, which doubles down on the fact that the T rating was always the target. The game definitely isn't made for adults, it's just made for otaku. The difference is the Japanese and even the Korean players are able to enjoy 18 plus content in its sections, but they don't push it to the forefront of the community or let it confuse them that the game itself is 18 plus. If you go to the Japanese side of the fandom, actually, you don't even have to go to that side. Just look around, you see minors playing the game all over the place. But definitely, if you go to those OST tracks and you look at the comments from Japanese players, you see a lot of players like, yeah, I played this before I graduated, or, you know, this song meant a lot to me because I was playing it during high school. Like, there's a lot of kids playing this game. Yeah, there's a lot of porn too. There's also a fuck ton of porn of Overwatch and Disney princesses and SpongeBob and Sandy Cheeks. Adults love porn because they're all addicted, but that doesn't make it an adult community just because there's porn of the game. Were the bronies an adult community? Maybe. No, because actually, I remember specifically my friend coming out to me as a brony when he was like 11. But he's transgender now. But anyway, Sensei is a really good role model for teenagers after all, so it should be no surprise that there's a lot of young people playing the game. Especially since Sensei teaches you exactly how to deal with erratic women. I mean, what do you think Blue Archive is about? Unironically, it's about crying. Pretty much every developer interview backs this up. They wanted to create an emotional story which people would never forget. I think it's really clear if you ask anyone about the story or if you go to the comments of any of the OST, especially on the JP side, it's going to be a whole lot of sobbing. Look, here's a quote from Isaku-san from one of the interviews. The player will be left with emotions besides just enjoyment. They will question life. Nevertheless, these sorts of deep aspects are only possible because they're entertaining. First, above all else, the game needs to be fun. Otherwise, the question contained within does not have meaning. That's what I believe. And in terms of professional ethics, that's how it should be. Oh my gosh, Isaku-san is so based. I can't believe we lost him. But that's what Blue Archive really is. It's actually a waifu gacha game that was developed with a T rating. And among the power players of the gacha market, it's probably the least explicit in all aspects except maybe blood. It's actually not an eroge, and no, it was never meant to be a spiritual expressor to explicit visual novels. Although it can probably be called a bishoujo game, or a subculture game as they're called in Korea. Its main inspirations are actually things like Girls and Panzer, Index, Girls Frontline, XCOM. Isaku-san also mentioned reading light novels when he was younger and directly cited Tarantino in his philosophy for how dialogue should be written. Light novels, manga, Tarantino movies. Not fucking eroges and visual novels. In fact, Isaku-san rather lamentingly explained that he only turned to trying to produce a visual novel after failing as a mangaka and a novelist. So I don't really give a shit how many visual novels you've read. Let's not pretend like a majority of them aren't trash. The point is, visual novels are one of the lowest forms of storytelling. Sure, there's some really good ones, but the vast majority are forgettable. More so than indie Metroidvanias. They're so easy to make that high schoolers make them for fun. I was 14 in an online anime group working on a visual novel, and yet they're held up like the holy grails, pun intended, of narrative, by the same type of terminally online losers who psyop themselves out of watching good anime simply because the wrong people like them. Sorry guys, I can't like this anime because hoodweebs like it. Yeah, or whatever other group they have to performatively hate on. So, lame. Fan service is fine and all, but there's a lot of people who act like they have this glorious taste when they cannot bring themselves to watch a story without a fan service character to just keep their attention the entire time. Hifumi's whole arc was about not being ashamed of enjoying good stories, no matter how cliche they are. But perhaps those types of people aren't fans of Hifumi. Doesn't the fact that the Mob-chan dating sim April Fool's joke video exists prove that Blue Archive isn't that type of game? Or else why would it even exist as an April Fool's? If this is already Blue Archive, then how can more of the same be an April Fool's? You know, Power World did the exact same fucking thing. Is Power World an eroge now? Is it a spiritual successor to eroges? No. I think Pocket Pair knows that people want to fuck the pals, and they're playing into that. But that's not what Power World is, obviously. But Aris is named after Alisoft, and Yuzusoft, and Ki. Yeah. First of all, let's not pretend like Yuzu Slop is good for anything besides a cheap couple hours of fantasy fulfillment. Anyway, there are no choices in Blue Archive. It's just a story told from the first person. It's obviously not the same type as any of these games. But what's interesting about the game development department, though, is their entire story was something of a late addition to the game. Now, I know I read this somewhere, but sorry, I couldn't find the source. It was something like Volume 2 was written after Volume 1 and 3 were already ironed out, or something like that. Because someone from the art team just happened to draw up the Cyber Sisters, or maybe the whole game development department, and the team loved them so much they were given their own story. Or more like they stole Seminar's story. If you haven't noticed, Alice has control of the arc in the current story, but it's actually Seminar who has the character named Noah. How did that happen? Noah's original design shows her with a railgun, but it was changed because the railgun was given to artists in the full game. Suddenly it starts to make sense why Yuka makes such an impact at the beginning of the game as the tutorial girl, only to be completely irrelevant in the story, and why Noah has that weird thing on her head which in any other game would signify, this is an android. It was even stated that all the Millennium characters were based on Noah and Yuka to keep them consistent with the Millennium design aesthetic. Anyway, I don't actually know if we know who named the game development department characters. It could have been whoever designed them, it could have been Isaku-san. Either way, I don't think they were trying to dog whistle some hidden message about Blue Archive actually being about sex with kids. That's just not Sensei's story. Let's go ahead and list off every single inspiration revealed by Hwansong and Isaku-san in the interview from the back of the official artworks book. For Hwansong, it's Persona, no surprise. Type Moon, no surprise. Hayao Miyazaki, the Studio Ghibli guy. Yoshiyuki Tomino, the Gundam guy. And for Isaku-san, it's Nasu, big surprise. Maijo Otaro, which is a novelist I'd never heard of. Sorry, my otaku power level just isn't high enough. And finally, Hideaki Anno. I just don't see a single name from Alisoft or Yuzusoft anywhere here. It seems more likely that they were just used because they made for cute names, which they do, and meant to pay homage to the people who made modern visual novels and popularized moe characters. Blue Archive is a moe-styled visual novel, but it's not an eroge. It's pretty much the complete opposite of Rant in every possible way. It's not meant to be a successor to those kinds of games. Aris's name is just a name. In fact, a major axis of Aris's story is that your origin in your name doesn't decide your endpoint. Both Aris and Kay get new names after all. Her name doesn't matter. What's matter is that she's a hero, and every other aspect of her character takes inspiration from RPGs. People might want her to simply be a shitty fanservice loli, but she far transcends that role placed on her. Someone who was supposed to be a demon king and destroy the world ended up being a hero. Blue Archive is almost like the product of a group of foreign otaku who, after half of their life, were finally able to make something great. I don't think they expected people to schizophrenically investigate the names of the game development department just to justify calling Blue Archive something it obviously isn't. But if we could go back to the sources of inspiration again, Isaku-san said Hideaki Anno, and quote all of his works. My childhood is made up of his work, he said. Which is really interesting to hear because that definitely includes one of my most beloved, not so niche mecha anime, Aim for the Top Gunbuster. And that means Sensei is probably somewhat inspired by the character Coach. Coach being the trainer of the two protagonists, who actually does marry one of his students. One of them, not a harem, because harems are irresponsible and inferior. And it's after she graduates. And he doesn't pursue her, she pursues him. Because, spoiler, he has space cancer and it's now or never for his happiness. In my opinion, Coach was a completely selfless individual. He didn't do anything for himself. Funnily enough, Hideaki Anno might have immediately gone back on this type of relationship, as his later, much more famous work tells the complete opposite story where an adult takes advantage of a high school student, and let's be nice and say she accidentally manipulated him due to her trauma. Evangelion also has another high school girl in love with an adult man combo, which is Asuka and Kaji. Kaji completely rejects her, because unlike Kazumi, Asuka is still a kid, and she's an idiot. I think what these character dynamics go to show is that women get a pass because they're emotional creatures, but men, like Sensei and Kaji, have a responsibility to carry themselves with dignity and reject stupid brats. This says a lot about society. I think it's much more likely that Sensei's role and expectation is much more intended to be like Coach or Kaji than a soulless degenerate eroge protagonist. Kaji teases Shinji, sure, but he obviously understands that adults shouldn't be with children, because children are stupid, and it's much better for society if we don't abuse them, actually. Anyway, leave it to the Blue Archive fandom to have me unironically feel the need that I have to explain why pedophilia is bad, actually. It's just a culture shock, isn't it? Okay, back to Blue Archive. Blue Archive isn't just another soulless gacha slop MiHoYo ripoff. What Blue Archive really is the new king of Comiket, and essentially a gift from the Korean otaku to the Japanese. Personally, my dad made me watch anime since I was a baby. Even to this day, he calls cicadas the Evangelion bugs. I miss when I was a kid and Dad was much more autistic about mecha anime. But anyway, I've been really into Japanese internet culture since I was in middle school. Toho was really popular back then. This is why I love Blue Archive. The devs studied decades of otaku culture in order to craft the world, and the game had a pretty long incubation period of its development. The result is a massively successful mobile game in the Japanese market from Nexon that would go on to carry the torch from Toho as the #1 at Comiket. And with that torch comes a lot of porn. I mean, the legacy of otaku culture. The king of Comiket is itself a kingmaker. Famous manga like The Daily Lives of High School Boys and Pop Team Epic had their authors start humble beginnings as Toho Dojin mangaka. The king of Comiket has the power to turn casual comic artists into famous mangaka, and amateur voice actors, game developers, and composers into widespread names in the industry, as well as the power to create memes that will sneak their way into every corner of the internet, regardless of language barrier. These are the powers held by the king of Comiket, as previously displayed by Toho and now Blue Archive. This is the legacy and baggage which Blue Archive carries. The devs have acknowledged in multiple interviews that the appeal of the game is the story. That is the reason it was so successful. Things like waifus and sex appeal certainly help, but they can never be enough to set Blue Archive apart in a market already full of it. The most important thing is that it's fun, and having the final chapter released so soon after the game came out was all part of the plan to keep interest in the game high as soon as the novelty faded. They didn't want to wait 10 years for an endgame type storyline, only not to be able to do it because no one cared anymore. Or maybe it was all a conspiracy and Isaku-san just wanted to leave and end the game already, I don't know. But I mean, I don't really think so. Just look at the interviews, it's obvious that they care about the game. And if I can be brutally honest for a second, all the people who whine about or complain that the gameplay is so boring or simplistic, you're outing yourselves as a low attention span. Or just stupid. Maybe it's not your cup of tea, okay, that's fine, but it's not bad. It's definitely not bad at all. Blue Archive's gameplay is great. And if it wasn't for it, I wouldn't be playing the game. The bar for mobile games is a lot lower, and honestly, I don't have enough time to waste any of it playing average gacha slop. I play Blue Archive because it has the characters, the writing, the music, the gameplay, and the visuals. It has enough of everything to be worth my time. If a mobile game doesn't have all of those things, it's just not worth playing in my opinion. Because the primary goal of a mobile game is to suck your wallet dry. So it better be fucking worth it. When people call the gameplay boring, what they mean is they can't just mash square and watch a flashy animation happen while numbers appear on screen. Blue Archive requires annoying things like team building and positioning. Ugh. Why are there tactics in my tactics game? This guy named Astryminal made a video complaining about slop content in the community, and he got a ton of hate. I thought it was okay. I found the editing to be a bit pretentious. It wasn't my style. Then again, I'm not a very good editor. And I was disappointed because it seemed like he was onto something, but fell just short of connecting the dots to where the real issue is. This commenter put it well. Imagine being mad at memes. I know they get repetitive, but I just ignore them when I see them on my feed. It's not that hard, LMAO. If you want good content to consume, then make it yourself instead of whining about it on YouTube. It's a bit harsh, but he is right. The slob content producers aren't the problem. They're symptoms of a gatekeeping failure. Although I highly doubt this commentator would be willing to admit that. The slob content is kind of pathetic though. It's like, what do I want to see on YouTube? Oh, I got an idea. More porn! I'm sure most people watching those videos are kids, by the way. I dare them to post their analytics. The biggest flaw of Astryminal's videos is that he didn't go nearly hard enough, because he's way too much of a nice guy. Being nice leaves you open to attack. Since he was going to get attacked anyway, he should have just gone all in and called slop merchants and their followers tourists, like they are. But of course, Astryminal is a nice guy, and starting a war was never his intent. He just made the mistake of thinking he could share his opinion. That's fine, I'll do it. We're not actually here to talk about his video, though. But the arguments in the comments section. Let's take a look at this thread. So this kid, AJ, is definitely a zoomer just from the way he speaks. And he's arguing about Cunny or whatever. But I thought this was really funny because this guy replies to him. And he says, played every day. That's a pretty bad camouflage for a tourist. There's no reason to play it every day, as it's not like other gacha games are grinding as hell. What's the reason to play Blue Archive every day? What will you get from it? For what specific reason? You're the type of witch this gatekeeping is aiming for. Holy fucking shit! We've come full circle. Playing every day is a bad camouflage for a tourist. That's right. Playing the game makes you a tourist. You fucking idiot. You know why he's saying this? Because everyone in his circle doesn't actually play the game either. He didn't realize anyone actually played the game. The very notion is a foreign concept to the wandering Coomer. It's not like other gacha games where grinding is hell. There's no reason to play every day. This guy's never played Blue Archive in his life. Literally everything in Blue Archive is on a daily cycle. Anytime there's a total assault or a firing drill, you have to do it one day at a time. The only way to level up in this game is to log in and dump your energy as fast as possible once a day. And it literally takes like a year of doing that every single day to hit max level without spending money. Be gone, you retarded tourist. Into the fire with you. Here's a comment from one of the wiki writers. I don't want to be mean to him because I don't think he's a bad person. But he said something ridiculous which I'd like to comment on. He says, I'd go on those videos, not just because of the video itself, but mostly the community underneath it. If anything, the video itself is just a calling card to gather because the community is fun and welcoming to interact with. Ah yes, the riveting community interactions such as the same joke 500 times. Samalik, that's complete bullshit. Let me ask you, why do we gatekeep? To keep out tourists. And what function do these videos serve? They're an open invitation to the community simply on the basis that you like loli porn, not a high bar. Is Blue Archive about loli porn? Well, it's a tactical RPG about the story of our youth and school days, and the responsibility of adults. So these videos have nothing to do with the game then, and they appeal to the lowest common denominator of sexual desire. They require literally zero knowledge of Blue Archive to be enjoyed. I don't need to play Overwatch to find the women hot. I have friends who don't play Blue Archive at all, and they see these videos. And you can find plenty of comments under the video saying, I don't like Blue Archive, but I like these videos. Or I like the community. These are anti-gatekeeping videos. Fucking Elden Ring has goon slop with millions of views. What do you think? Is Elden Ring being gate-kept hardcore by these videos? I think the fuck not. The community you interact with under the video is not the Blue Archive community, it's the Cunny community. Because where the fuck are they on the official channel? Where the fuck are they on the comments of the Korean and Japanese fan animations? Where are they on RS Rainstorm or Cassiu's videos? I don't know how to pronounce his name. Not cunny enough for him. These people are a separate community that I call the Cunny community, which harbors no specific loyalty to Blue Archive. These are the people who end up very disappointed when they download the game expecting to see the Black Souls rape button, and instead get a whopping zero sexual content in the game. And what happens when people download a game expecting something and don't get it? They start shitting up the community, complaining that the game doesn't appeal to them, which is why they need to be kept out. Oh, Blue Archive is cool because of the Cunny, but I wish the game had this, and I wish it had that. It's literally the reverse of this meme. And no, it doesn't suddenly make it okay when it's done in reverse. Join the hobby, change the hobby. We don't need tourists coming in trying to pressure the game to change. The game didn't come this far by being overly explicit. but by hitting a perfect balance between allowing a much wider range of character designs than something like Azure Lane or Nikkei. Listen, do you want more porn? Then you want a game like Blue Archive or Overwatch, which have intrinsically attractive characters without being overly sexual. Games like Nikkei and Azure Lane get a lot less porn because nothing is left to the imagination. People love the Blue Archive characters to a much more parasocial extent than any other game, but if they were designed to behave like the Nikkeis or like the Ship Girls, I would see them the same way I do the characters from any other gacha game, as the useless whores good only for gooning. Blue Archive was able to carve its spot in the market by being more than that. The fandom has been devastated by virtue signaling, clout-chasing barbarians begging for attention. These people don't play the game. Many of them can barely speak English, and the only thing they care about is the like number go up if I say Cunny and pregnant enough. It's so boring. Listen, I thought Cheese Slap was hilarious the first time I'd seen it because of how wild it is. But let's be real, pile driver videos get upwards of 100k views. You can stop pretending like these gatekeep anyone, quite the opposite. These memes are an open invitation into the community simply on the basis that you like lolly porn. Just say the magic words, Cunny, 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 and you're in. Wow, tough gatekeeping. Again, who likes lolly porn? Oh yeah, Vosh. In Lolly Kami Requiem is the most viewed VTuber-related video. It's not the high bar you think it is. Lolicon isn't some niche thing protecting your hobby. I come from the Toho community. This is back in the Heisei era. I'm guessing a lot of you were in diapers. And back then, one of the biggest issues with the Toho community was how many people didn't play the games. We called them secondaries because, sorry, reading a wiki and jerking off to the doujins doesn't actually make you a Toho fan. Yet somehow the only requirement of being a Blue Archive fan became jerking off. Once again, I get it. I lust over the characters too. There's no shame in that. Until it's your whole personality. And until you pretend like you're a fan when you don't even play or read. At some point, you gotta grow up. The game is about the story of our youth and school days, not my son's crippling porn and internet addiction. Have you ever seen this meme? Yeah, I have really trans humor, chud. That's what the community has turned into. Personally, I recommend spamming the shit out of this image for the time being. I can't tell you how many times I've seen someone get called a hoyotard for liking the wrong ship. Check the accuser's profile and it's a 16 to 21-year-old Southeast Asian femboy or transgender with a feed full of mihoyo porn. You're the same fucking people. What the fuck are you talking about? You're all hoyotards obsessed with ships. It's like every single mihoyo zoomer is infected with the enforced headcanon's disease. Blue Archive's legendary gatekeeping in action, everyone. None of the Cunny posters play the game. And when they feel safe, they admit it. Look, if you want to have a Cunny community, that's fine by me. But that's not the Blue Archive community, that's a separate thing. Which is essentially what's happened. Blue Archive has spawned this parallel community of terminally online people who form these like worshipping circles around certain characters. And it's completely separate from the game. They don't play the game or talk about it, they just declare their love and sexual desires for the characters to each other. It reminds me a lot of ancient tribes and city-states worshipping different gods. They often get into online skirmishes with each other over the characters, just like warring city-states. It's freaking crazy. When you see people getting really excited about gatekeeping Blue Archive on X, this is a community that's doing that. Not the people who actually play the game, because we lost the gatekeeping war to them a long time ago. These people have these crazy headcanons and they constantly repeat them like religious texts. Again, I do not care about dirty jokes or drawing porn of the characters or drawing the characters with daughters. None of that is an issue, it's all just fanfiction. The only issue is the growing number of people we've been letting run around the community lately, despite not even playing the game, who go around enforcing their fanfictions onto everyone else. Shit like, actually Sensei fucks all the students, it's canon. Literally the exact same behavior of all those retards in the mihoyo fandom going, actually these two characters are gay, it's canon. So you can't draw that pairing. It's not adult behavior, which makes sense. Many people only consume NSFW content, and so they assume that's all the community is. It's not true. There's plenty of safe for work content, and the problem is X is going to prioritize showing you porn because it has a much more widespread appeal. If someone draws some cool artwork of Hoshino, well, it doesn't matter how impressive the art is. The appeal is narrowed down to people who are invested in Hoshino as a character and want to see her looking cool. The appeal is that you're already invested in the character enough to derive pleasure just from seeing them in a positive scenario. But if someone draws Hoshino slobbering on a cock, Well, everyone wants to get their dick sucked by an anime girl. It doesn't matter whether they know their name or the origin of the character. Your human brain is literally wired to prioritize sexual desire above all else. And therefore, porn hijacks your brain. You don't have to know shit about the character to find them hot. In fact, it's easier if you don't know anything, since it's much harder to be attracted to people who you have close relationships with. It's like the friend zone. You know, like, are you attracted to your sibling? Don't answer that. Oh sure, non-explicit art has some widespread appeal, but as much as porn? People get into series through porn all the time. They're scrolling through their favorite pornographic website like Rule 34 or Jailbrew or something, until they see a character that appeals to their taste, and then they look into the source material. Porn is a major source of tourism. If someone gets into the game because of porn, that's fine, I don't really care. But you're still a tourist until you appreciate the game for what it is, rather than only being appealed to through secondary content. Listen, I'm not above reveling in the abuse of fictional characters. One of my favorite anime from the last year is about the villain molesting the magical girls every episode. That's what Maho Ako is about. But that's not what Blue Archive is about. Isn't it amazing that you can read the comments on the new chapters of Maho Ako, and they're all about the actual events of the manga? It's almost like the community actually cares about the manga and is capable of saying something besides NPC dialogue. This tourist delusion that a real sensei rapes all the students is so fucking cringe. That's not a real sensei, that's a Reddit sensei, 300 pounds and begging for affirmation from his simple-minded peers. Look, he said the based words to gatekeep the tourists who want to actually play the game. Here's your posted it again word. Nobody in Japan cares about this shit, by the way. You can have headcanons and jokes and talk about them. That's a-okay. But it's so fucking gay when people completely forget the source material, or more like they never read it, and they try to enforce their misinterpretation onto undiluted people. Sorry, but Blue Archive isn't a Pakistani migrant simulator. General Student Council President Boris Chan didn't bring Sensei to Kivotos to rape all the students and spread Islam. If you could read, you'd know that. Kivotos has been there for centuries with no Sensei. Sensei was brought there by the GSC to stop the incoming catastrophes, as well as guide the students. Pay attention to how he treats characters like Mika and Wakamo, who are obsessed with him. He adapts to each student and gives them the type of role model they need. With Mika and Wakamo, he's very firm because they're violent and dangerous people. But with characters like Fuka and Hina, who are overworked and underappreciated, he's much more doting. He provides them with the type of attention they need to become better people, like an actual good teacher would. It's like the whole game is a parenting guide. People have this crazy idea that Wakamo is gonna rape Sensei because their brains have been rotted by dojins. But when you actually talk to her, she literally runs away in fear when Sensei tries to hang out with her. It's fine to have your headcanons that they fuck, but it's not real. I often see tweets like this, and of course we're arguing about ships. No, sorry, but the core of Blue Archive is not up for debate. The game literally tells you the story of our youth and school days, as well as the responsibility of adults. Seeing it as a harem, choosing your favorite character, or choosing to love all characters platonically is entirely player choice. But canonically speaking, anything that would be irresponsible of an adult is complete fanfiction. This isn't Black Souls. This isn't a 2000s harem anime. All of the intimacy between Sensei and the students is so completely tame. They literally come off the same way as a little girl confidant in Persona 3. It's a game about taking care of your students. So, may I have the privilege to enjoy a platonic relationship between characters without shippers enforcing their headcanons for once? Can I please just play the game? Once you get to this point in the argument, the anti's brain usually just breaks and they default to repeating the scripture. Sensei rapes Mutsuki, or something like that. Typical communist tactics. Say it enough and eventually it'll become true. Just like how Miku created Minecraft, right? On what authority do I have to buy hentai dojins to not be a tourist? Blue Archive isn't about that. It's not a community based on porn. It's based on a mobile game. If you're in a porn-focused community, that's a separate thing. You're not really a Blue Archive fan, you're more like a secondary fan. A tourist. Now, a real sensei plays the fucking story. He protects his students, he builds his cafe, and he goes for plat on the total assaults, even if he fails every time. He might be a bit of a lolicon, but that doesn't mean he abuses his students. And yes, fucking your students is abuse. No, this isn't me projecting my modern views onto a disconnected fictional world. These expectations clearly exist in Kivotos. Do I really have to explain that? If you want to read those kinds of fanfictions, go ahead. But Blue Archive, the epic anime RPG on the Play Store, doesn't offer that kind of twisted fantasy. The game has a representation for those who would abuse the students only for their own pleasure and then toss them away. Gematria. And there is no redemption for them. The worst offenders like Beatrice fucking die. And Basement Dweller is made to grovel and trapped in an interdimensional prison for eternity. Meanwhile, Sensei is crazy enough to use his own hard-earned money just to protect them. But of course, the game doesn't have voice acting, so you would need above a 3rd grade reading level to be able to play the story and understand any of that. And suddenly, it starts to make sense why the community got exponentially worse after the anime aired. And hey, if you don't actually care about the students and you have no emotional connection to the game or the characters, if you think that's cringe and you just want to horny post and share fanfiction, that's fine. There's no shame in being a secondary if you just stop lying about it. Be a proud tourist. Here's another argument I've heard before. But Sensei is supposed to be a self-insert, so they are what you want them to be. This argument is usually used as a justification to say that Sensei can be a pedo rapist because you can self-insert and make him whatever you want. Well, I think this whole topic of self-inserts could have its own massive discussion around it, because I was talking about it for a while with one of my friends, and I got the sense that this might just be entirely subjective, even though I'm pretty sure I'm right. So I think one of the biggest questions is it a self-insert because you apply yourself to the character, or because you apply the character to yourself? For all the literally me characters, you see yourself in the character, but that's not you projecting, is it? That emotion within the character with which you're empathizing was already there before you got there. It's drawn into the page. It's not something that wasn't there until you applied it to them. If anything, I feel that when you empathize with a fictional character, it's them that's being projected onto you. And people will often incorporate more of the characters with which they empathize with into themselves. So, is Guts a self-insert? Well, my friend told me when he reads Berserk, he is literally Guts. It's not a story about a character named Guts going through something. It's literally himself experiencing those events, and he is named Guts. That seemed a bit weird to me. It's not a way I could ever read a story. So when I watch Monogatari, I see every single character as a little piece of myself. I have felt every one of these emotions before, and I empathize really well with every arc. Even if I can remember the events of the story like I was there, I don't feel like I took any of these actions. I incorporate pieces of the characters into myself, but I can never be tricked into thinking I myself are going through the events. Unless it's a video game where the protagonist is completely silent and faceless, and I control their every action, like Dark Souls. But what about RPGs? They're called role-playing games, so you play a role. Are all RPG protagonists self-inserts? Well, if I'm playing a mage character, I play that role by becoming the mage myself. That's roleplay. I'm inserted into the story, but only because the story is first inserted into me, giving me the opportunity to fall in line with the fictional world. People say Master Chief is a self-insert, but I remember hearing that even different members of Bungie disagreed on this. For me, it's quite immersive when he shuts up, but the second he opens his mouth, I know, that's not me, that's Master Chief. My relationship with Cortana is not the same as his, and I've never shot an alien. I strive to be like him, but he's not me, even though he's a piece of me. But with Noble Six, it's a lot easier to say, that's me, since he has zero pre-established relationships with other characters and he's customizable. When I play as Noble Six, I feel much more like I'm experiencing the story as a character, rather than a god who pushes the world forward with the W key. Anyway, Sensei obviously has pre-established and unshakable beliefs. I see the world through his eyes, but I have zero choice in his actions. Isn't that just a first-person story which has existed for thousands of years? So in what way is that a self-insert? Are all first-person stories self-inserts? No, we have another word for stories about the reader. It's second person. So I guess the only deciding factor is whether the protagonist says, I walk to the store, or if the game says, you walk to the store. Well, as far as I know, Blue Archive is always narrated with I, except for the times when it switches to third person. There are times when the reader is without Sensei for chapters at a time. But at least for the sections that aren't first person, then what? That decides whether or not I have the freedom to project my own version of the character onto the story, just because it's in first person? That's not right, because I can already do that to every story ever. That's a headcanon. And try as they might, no one can take that from you because it's not physical. It's like an intellectual property. I can play all of the Halo games while pretending that Master Chief is secretly a grunt piloting a mech suit, And most devs don't give a shit. The answer is always something like, if you want to see the story that way, go ahead. Even if it's retarded, it's still entertainment, and you can consume it that way if you want. So when I'm told Sensei wants whatever I want, even if it's perverted, well, it's not very convincing because I can already apply that to any story ever. And the game does nothing to support this belief. Like when Sensei says, I'm not going to search for Kuzunoha anymore. What are you talking about, Sensei? I want to search for Kuzunoha. Aren't you literally just a self-insert? Why are you denying my desires? When the story does nothing to affirm the idea of a self-insert, any kind of whack projection onto Sensei that defeats the entire purpose of his character by turning him into someone amoral and irresponsible is just as ridiculous as pretending that Master Chief is a grunt in a mech suit. And I can safely say you're enjoying it the wrong way, for the wrong reason, regardless of if the devs say, you can enjoy the game that way if you want. Because of course they will. The truth is, Blue Archive isn't about you, it's about the students. If you have to project your own interpretation onto the story, are you not living a delusion? If Sensei is really whoever I want him to be, well then the Imperium of Man can be the bad guys. Because apparently projection is valid no matter how much the story contradicts it. We might as well say that Sensei is a vanguardist leftist who's actually using the foreclosure task force to overthrow the bourgeoisie, yeah. Personally, I think if you need a character or story to affirm you, that's weak aura. It's like the stone toss meme of the kids in Goku. Who's in the right here? The girl who needs the character to affirm her specific characteristics, or the kids who know that they're not literally Goku, but can still live vicariously through him regardless, and will hopefully retain some of his virtue. I mean, I thought we were sick of morally gray leftist storytelling where the protagonist is a piece of shit. What is this commie nonsense trying to project your own selfish flaws onto Sensei? As if he has to be just as bad a person as you are. I already know the answer to this. According to my own fantasy, it's not morally gray because it's part of my fantasy that sex with kids is a virtue. The answer to that is that your subjective morals are wrong and retarded. This is the part where we accept that our worldviews are incompatible and we build a border wall between us. But unfortunately, that doesn't stop me from running into you on the internet. This is why the consolidation of fandoms has been so bad for every fandom ever. You guys, the overly excited secondaries with a limited interest in the game, should be banned from major forums and sent to the offsites. One of the best things 4chan ever did was their system of containment boards. But that was a long time ago. Someone might say, but the whole game is a delusion. That's the whole point of video games, is to be transported to a fantasy world. Yeah, but your fantasy is stupid and bad, and my fantasy is based and sensei-pilled, and aligns with the actual story written into the game. But honestly, I don't care about your specific fantasy, or if it's wrong. My issue is just with liars pretending not to be tourists so that they can gatekeep on the basis of their fanon interpretation. I just happen to notice that there's a correlation with the liars and shitty fantasies. Regardless, I want to take a look at some of Isaku-san's statements about Sensei from an interview from 2024. Interviewer says, Blue Archive skillfully puts the player in the shoes of Sensei, the Japanese word for teacher, and what the player is called. How much do you intend for the player to experience this Sensei role? Isaku-san says, we try not to go into too much detail on the personality and characteristics of Sensei. This is to make the player more easily able to empathize with Sensei. Because of this, the character of Sensei may seem ambiguous at times. However, that's a good thing because Sensei acts as the user's avatar. So Sensei is a bit of a blank slate so you can empathize with him. And that's a good thing because he's your avatar. So that means he can be whatever I want. No. He's your vehicle through the story, but you still have to follow the road. There's a difference between empathize with him, feel what he feels, and enforce your own feelings onto him. That's two very different things. Sensei in Blue Archive is a receptacle for the player's empathy, while also being one step removed from the story, observing the events surrounding each girl. Sensei's position made such a multi-protagonist story possible. Tangent time. I think it's interesting that he mentions Sensei being removed from the story in the multi-protagonist story because it touches on something that I think about sometimes, which is the fact that Sensei is not always the hero of the story. A lot of the time, he's the sage. That is to say, he takes a role like Gandalf. It's not always true, like in Volume F, that was definitely Sensei time. But in something like Volume 1, Chapter 3, that's definitely not Sensei time. Now it's Hoshino time. Sensei has a subplot about feeling inadequate and his inability to save Yume, but that's really only a small part of the story. The interviewer says, I am charmed by Sensei's maturity, so much so that I want to be a good teacher myself. Isaku-san says, I feel both grateful and responsible to all our players regarding how they perceive the Sensei avatar, and in turn how the story of Blue Archive is interpreted and what sort of influence their work has on them. I wanted to take my dissatisfaction with this world and ask, what is it that makes an adult responsible? Are there any adults who will take responsibility in this world? However, that's not my reason for creating Blue Archive. As I said earlier, these questions are simply things that emerge naturally, like fingerprints. After this, they start talking about being a foreigner to otaku culture and spaghetti westerns. So let's skip ahead to this part. From this perspective, I wanted to portray Sensei in Blue Archive not with private father-child relationships within a patriarchal system, but as someone with more social responsibility. The structure of an adult protecting a child is different from the relationship between father and child. Exactly, there is social pressure on Sensei to be a responsible person and protect the students. But he's not their father, he's their teacher. That is to say, Sensei has no right to punish the students. He can only accept them as they are and try his best to guide them. But you would never let a teacher punish your child. That's not their responsibility. Reading on. And I have one earnest wish, that you will treat the characters as people. Data is information. Characters are living entities. Characters are entities projected by humans. And characters are a reflection of ourselves, and we ponder on our own lives through the stories that the characters experience. For this reason in Blue Archive, we tried to take into account all the virtues and faults that people possess. It may have been a risky choice from a marketing standpoint, but I thought it was a challenge worth giving a try. I proactively make characters who are easy to hate as villains, like Mika and Saori, and also characters like Haruna. Of course, there may be users who cannot accept these characters. Nevertheless, however, I hope that people will accept this absurd, nonsensical world in which they live in as real. Their flaws are what make them human. And because they are human, they possess verisimilitude, making them objects of affection. Sensei both saves and is saved by the characters. Maybe what I wanted to depict was a story in which joy is shared. So true. I think this is the interviewer saying this. The human nature of the characters in Blue Archive has undoubtedly led to their popularity among users. By the way, you said villains like Mika, Saori, and also others like Haruna. But wouldn't Haruna be surprised to hear herself listed? Isaku-san says, Haruna is in a sense a villain who shows no remorse. Actually, she probably doesn't even see herself as a villain. That is to say, she's not a villain in a serious sense. But I find myself worrying if there is something wrong with me for thinking that a character like this would really be accepted by users. So in my mind, she falls into the same category as Mika and Saori. So I find this very funny because it's definitely one of the things which I think really sets Blue Archive apart. I've said this before, but the reason I like Mika is because she's a bad person. A lot of my favorite characters are characters like Kaya, Shudo, literal bad people. My favorite is definitely Hoshino, who is full of regret and sometimes very selfish in the way she chooses to deal with things. I'm also a big fan of Fubuki, who is just lazy. It's not like what you typically see a lot of today, which is just good people in bad worlds. No, the world is great. It's people like Haruna who suck, just like in real life. Okay, tangent time. Since Isaku-san mentioned being an atheist, I just wanted to say, I fucking love the religious aspects of Mika's story. I'm not really a religious person myself. I don't go to church, sorry. But one day I was studying Japanese and I finally realized what Mika says in her EX skill. She says, I'll pray for you guys. So this woman, who's about to fight for her life against a horde of twisted ghosts summoned from the past to enforce loopholes in an ancient contract like some kind of mystical lawfare. But she's not worried about herself. She's praying for us. She's praying for you. When I realized that, I cried. Anyway, the interviewer asks, let me ask you one question. The title Blue Archive contains the word blue, signifying adolescence. Why is it that we protect this adolescence? Why must we? Now, it's translated as adolescence, but I think a better word would probably be youth. Isaku-san says, I'm already 43 years old, so I can't call myself a young person, but I was young once. When thinking back on those old days, I feel that those in the midst of youth are not aware of how valuable it is. And why should we protect youth? I don't give a reason or justification for that question to users. Or rather, I don't have a justification. That's up to the user. The user themselves must protect because they believe protection is necessary. If the user judges it to be unnecessary, well, that would be a failure of the game's design. There you go. You wanted freedom to choose for Sensei as your self-insert? That's your freedom. You get to choose why youth must be protected. But not if, because that would be a very different game. If you don't want to protect, well, that's a failure. Sensei is the fury cast down upon rotten adults and justice for children. You have the freedom to choose why he does what he does, but no matter how much you scream self-insert, you can't change that his purpose is protecting kids. If you play as a mage in an RPG, you can't just decide that you should suddenly be proficient with heavy weapons. That's not a mage anymore. You can't make a mage a marauder, and you can't turn Sensei into an immoral person. Things start to make a lot more sense when you start to notice what countries a lot of senseis are from. Surprise, surprise, non-Western countries can't understand the societal obligations of sensei to protect the students and never allow harm to come to them. It's a fundamentally Western cultural idea. The expectation that a political figure has a responsibility to act in the best interests of the people and not abuse his position. Even a lot of Eastern European players struggle with this, because we know their whole culture is cynicism and corruption maxing. So it's the same deal. People say, it's a cunny game. The focus of the game is cunny. It's not true. You should be able to tell just by playing the game that that's not what it's about. But I get that a lot of low attention span people can't be bothered to understand the game as a whole, including combat and story, so they need someone of authority to explain it to them. In which case, you have to call on the devs. There's plenty of interviews and messages from the developers, and that's not the vibe you get at all. The idea that it's just a waifu game. Because Blue Archive was never meant to just be corpo waifu slop. Maybe Nexon wanted that, but Project MX definitely didn't. It was always intended to be a story in a world with a soul. If you read interviews with the developers or read the messages in the back of the art book, you'll see Blue Archive wasn't just slapped together as an excuse to sell PNGs of lolis. It's a real game with passion behind it. Secondaries get so excited to make worship posts about Sensei, their heckin'-based harem protagonist. Cuck. Despite it being obvious that a Sensei who would do anything irresponsible of an adult is a failure. Me when my prophet rapes his child wives in between Salette, libtard status, owned. As if the most base thing about harem protagonists isn't how they autistically ignore all the women. I mean, come on guys, how are we all gonna make it if you guys promote one dude stealing all the women? And it's always in some misguided attempt to filter Reddit antis. Because we all know if there's two things woke Redditors hate, it's polyamory and sexual freedom for children. Blue Archive is a harem game in the same way that Persona is, which is to say, it's entirely up to how you play. But I mean, even then, Blue Archive has no dating the characters, and every Bond story is so extremely tame. I don't really get investment in this narrative because honestly, it doesn't matter. In the real world, all anime girls are waifus. Girls in Panzer has no sensei, yet all those characters are waifus. Sensei doesn't need to explicitly be a harem protagonist for you to collect all the waifus like Pokemon. And for a lot of people, having a protagonist character there kind of gets in the way of the immersion. That's why some people were thinking that the Blue Archive anime wouldn't even show Sensei, which would have been ridiculous, but a little bit funny. Some escapism is okay. One of the appeals of Blue Archive, often cited in interviews, is their bright world which heavily contrasts with other gacha settings. But to take that beautiful world and corrupt it into a dirty, degenerate form of escapism, isn't it a bit ironic when the whole point of Blue Archive is to defend Kivotos from the corruption of adults? If you actually see Blue Archive as simply a fantasy fulfillment so you can feel like you're needed and loved by all these little girls just for existing, you'd probably think it's a window to the Islamic afterlife. If that's all you want out of Blue Archive, well, there are better options, and Nexon is taking advantage of you. I don't care if you're 35 to 45, hardworking with a full-time job, and you just haven't been able to find the right girl in life, but thankfully Nexon offers you a way out. I don't care. I saw people were modding the Blue Archive title screen, which is kind of funny, I guess. It's not the first time I've seen someone swap files in a game before. But when I was digging around on Twitter, I found out people unironically play games like Zenless with all nude mods and post about it on Twitter. Why? Is this just like a virtue signal for your side of the culture war, or do you actually need nude mods to be able to play games? If it's like a culture war thing, I know there's going to be a lot more political infighting in the coming years, as people realize not everyone on the right is for unlimited degeneracy. Okay. If you want to masturbate, that's fine, but it'd probably be easier if it was a video instead of a video game, right? That way you wouldn't have to mash buttons. I guess unless it's like specifically your thing to masturbate to the NPCs as they unassumingly walk around naked. It's like an exhibitionist type fetish, right? I guess an exhibitionist fetish would explain why it needs to be posted online as well. I know you can't actually appreciate the story or take it seriously at all with the nude mod on, So it's obvious you don't care about the game itself. Well, call me a fascist, but I actually don't think being addicted to porn is a good thing. Again, don't care if you jerk off to whatever once in a while, but if you live and breathe porn and you're a sensei, I think your students would be very concerned for your health. At some point, you gotta grow up. The game is about the story of our youth and school days, not my son's crippling porn and internet addiction. I don't know about other people, but whenever I open the game, the first thing I'm met with is Fubuki's smile. And when I see your face, I think probably the last thing going through my mind is, how can I ruin this beautiful scene by robbing her of her innocence and raping the shit out of her? I don't really care if you have that kind of fantasy once in a while. Obviously, a lot of people are into kinky shit like fucking outside. But it's not really good for you to be in that headspace all the time, you know? You should not be obsessed with sex. It's not Chad or responsible adult behavior. You know, as is typical, the Japanese and Korean fan bases aren't like this. They actually understand how to enjoy the game for what it is. I am now going to show you proof. Let's take a look at some of the memes from the East Asian communities. Yuka, Please Marry Me is a popular copy pasta you'll see whenever Yuka is posted. If this was a global meme, it'd be, Yuka, please birth 10 children, which would have been funny the first time, doesn't quite keep its luster after the 1000th time the way a marriage proposal does. Next up, we've got Poison Yuka. It's just Yuka, but purple. 100 kilograms, that's making fun of Yuka for being fat. Gomen Yuka, it's a bit raunchy, but it's not explicit. Yuka is a lolicon. Oh, we could never have that one on global. Death Momoi, Hoshino Sakusaku, Atsui Yo, Isaya on mute, Hoshino Odd Loop, all blue and one yellow are a stance, Bena being afraid of Maki, and on and on. Okay, well, let's compare that to some of the memes from the global side. Let's see. Cheese Slap, okay, the joke is porn. Dryness Squad, I kind of like this one, but the joke is still porn. And it's out of character. Racist Momoi, okay, this one's funny, but it's still out of character. Iroha and Tiaring Hina, this is like the shitty version of Gomen Yuga because, believe it or not, the joke is porn, and it's mischaracterization of Hina and Iroha's relationship. Ewok, okay, that one's good. Brain Rot Racer, okay, that's good. California Girls, that one's alright. Oh yeah, and Cunny Pregnancy Rape Shunny Chunny Mother of Triplets Correction. Under every single post because we're so boring. We're so damn boring. For like 2 years now. There's a big new meme on the JP and KR sides like every 3 months, but the global community is still repeating the same fucking jokes because we keep letting in more tourists who keep them alive. Well, of course they do because you'd actually have to play the game to find something else to laugh at. But some of the copy pasta phrases are from JP tweets. Yes, isolated Japanese and Korean tweets that are years old now and were funny specifically because they were wild and inappropriate. It's a lot less funny when tourists get a hold of them and spam the shit out of them, sucking out every ounce of comedy from it. The shock factor is completely gone. It being an in-joke is completely gone. It's a lot more cringe when you have normie outsiders trying to cash in on the joke for validation and likes. These are the lowest common denominator jokes. You don't need to know anything about BA to laugh at, ooh, whoa, Connie impregnation is a literal anti-gatekeeping. You can take a look at Akun's tweets from the East videos, and you'll notice a couple things. One, they're all quote tweets, so they're not invading official spaces, they're having fun on their own profile. Two, Japanese posters have enough humility and respect to admit that their jokes are delusions and actively apologize for them. They have a culture of politeness. 3, these guys almost always have an actual talent, like being an artist with tens of thousands of followers. Their entire existence isn't just to post cunny slop. 4, each joke is actually original, instead of literally copy-pasting the same buzzwords in the replies of every artwork, like an actual living NPC. Good thing it's tweets from the East and not tweets from the Southeast, or else it'd be the same fucking thing every time. The JP and KR fans, for the most part, understand the nuance of when and how to make dirty jokes. Of course, they're not all the same, they're individuals, but the majority of them know how to act. And they have plenty of other jokes to call on. Although the Japanese and Korean communities are different and it isn't accurate to completely generalize their behaviors together, neither of them have this absolutely insatiable desire to constantly virtue signal sex with children every chance they get. And they have much more tact when they do make dirty jokes. And they don't let it get in the way of actual love and discussion of the game. Our side of the community used to be like that. We had the ability to actually talk about the game. Now we're only capable of NPC dialogue. So one thing that bothers me is correction jokes used to be ironic. What do I mean? The characters obviously make mistakes and need to be corrected. That wasn't really a joke, it was just true. It's literally your job as a teacher. The joke comes from because it sounds dirty to say. Old correction jokes understood that it sounded dirty to say, you need correction. And that's what made it funny. But the need for correction was genuine. It wasn't just an excuse to abuse the characters. It was legitimate that they would have to take extra lessons or clean the pool or something to make up for what they'd done. It sounds like something dirty is going to happen, and then it cuts to the characters cleaning the pool or something. But eventually it stopped being a joke and kind of just switched over to exclusively being, no, I just want to rape you. Now, if you wanted it to be a sexual roleplay thing, that was fine. You could read R18 Dojins to get that experience. But it was well accepted that that wasn't actually what Blue Archive was about. It was just a joke. Sensei's role is to be a pillar of hope, not some abusive king. It's not that kind of game. But nowadays it's like, a character exists, you need correction, grr, I'm gonna rape you for daring to be in my presence. It's kind of fucked up, isn't it? Raping people for no reason. It's not like rants where the whole world is shit and everyone deserves it. You'll see some art of a student giving Sensei a gift, and you'll see a comment like, grr, this brat needs correction. Bro. It seems like they forgot what the word correction actually means, or maybe they never actually knew in the first place because they're ESL. The word correction in English implies that something is wrong which needs to be fixed. It's not the same as a word like discipline, which is what you would use to describe keeping someone in line. To say that a character who's doing something good needs correction falls flat as a joke in English because it doesn't really make sense. I'm not really into that kind of abusive fantasy, I'm sorry. I liked what Maho Ako did. Utena is just straight up sexually assaulting the other characters. But it's funny and hot, because they're enemies. But Blue Archive isn't about that. That's not how it got popular. Again, it's like lowest common denominator. You don't need to know anything about Blue Archive to perv over the characters. And this might just be me, but I find it much harder to be attracted to characters in games that I actually care about. For example, the Nikkeis. I don't really know anything about the Nikkeis or care about them at all. So that's why they're all free reign for rape and goon to me. But when it comes to something I care about, it's a little bit harder. It's kind of hard to put into words, but basically we used to be able to ride the line. Like, yes, we like lolis and hentai, and that's great and all. But excited exclamations of perverted desires were still under some level of irony, because obviously that's shameful and a good sensei would never want anything dirty. It also kind of helps you get it out of your system. Being 1000% coom-pilled all the time is not good for you after all. If you're unable to escape that state of mind even for a second, to enjoy the game for what it is, you've got a problem. Unfortunately, this has become really hard to say because of all the bad actors and, like, retarded feminists complaining about freaking porn addicts objectifying women. No. This ain't about women, it's about you. Porn is holding you back. You must escape the matrix, not for women, but for yourself. You know, I remember a great sage saying something along the lines of, the quality of gooners has decreased. I couldn't agree more. Right now, I think the community has a bit too much Hanako and not enough Koharu. So Hanako makes the dirty jokes, but Koharu is the one who acknowledges them as inappropriate, giving them comedic value. It's like the classic straight man and funny man combo, which is integral to comedy. Without Koharu to freak out, Hanako's jokes just aren't as funny anymore. In fact, I think Hanako herself understands this, which is why she values Koharu so much. If you remember, before she joined the Make a Word Club, Hanako was completely lost. As intelligent as she was missing something, and she couldn't make a decision on where to go with her life. Hanako needs Koharu to complete her. In this way, I think the Japanese community is a lot better, even though they're still horny nerds just like everyone else. For whatever reason, they maintain a bit more tact with their dirty jokes, and it always comes off a bit funnier. I also think they're better at acknowledging the shame and making dirty jokes. You might say, well, that's because they have a culture of shame. Well, I just like that culture more. There's a common meme in the Japanese and maybe the Korean side of the community, which involves posting this image. It's Blue Archive producer Kim Young-ha saying, Blue Archive is a wholesome game. It's juxtaposed by the fact that the wall behind him has Bunny Karn's fat fucking ass right off screen. This image is usually posted by the fans whenever the official accounts post something lewd, like a character's new alt that is really sexy or a comic strip that ends with a lewd panel. Another common response to such things is to send an image of Koharu saying, "Lewdness is banned." If this was a post on the global account, the response would be a bunch of devolved monkeys going, "Rape pregnant cunny sex." Do we see the difference in online etiquette yet? The Japanese side of the community channels Hanako and Koharu. And the Hanako-Koharu dynamic is what keeps things balanced. If you've only got Hanako, then things become overly perverted and end up just coming off as barbaric and degenerate. But if you have too much Koharu, suddenly you can't have any kind of fan service as everything is overly safe and nothing is fun anymore. And if you know Hanako and Koharu well, you probably know that despite their outward presentation, Koharu is the one with more lewd interests, and Hanako is the one who is more unsure of herself. They're like the perfect representation of the yin and yang that makes Blarchive. It's wholesome, but it's fan service. And it's fan service, but it's definitely wholesome. Shit like this is why I call Blarchive peak. The character dynamics in this game, like between Hoshino and Hina, Azusa and Saori, the whole tea party, it's like, I don't really know what else to call it besides peak. The characters inherit the famous narrative archetypes and embody them in such a pure but intricate way. Blarchive literally starts to feel like one of those classic epic poems. And I think the mystery that Blarchive maintains by not lore dumping really adds to that. Okay, I just did a tangent into the game storytelling, so I don't really know how to transition this back to my argument. But basically, I'm not one to please people's fetishes. I know politics make their way into the bedroom and ruin everything. I only ask that people behave themselves in public spaces like official community posts. Blue Archive isn't a porn game or a porn community. That sort of thing doesn't belong in public. Other communities don't have to deal with this. We used to know the limits of the jokes, and it made it funnier when someone really pushed it. It was like, oh my gosh, he really said that. Bruh, you crazy, LMAO. But now everyone wants to be Mr. Funnyman and is trying so fucking hard to get screenshotted and posted on a Struggle Tweets account to impress their circle of terminally online teenagers and get some internet clout with lib-based people or get a Twitter Blue payout. And now that everyone is constantly pushing it, it's just not funny anymore. I think people know this, which is why they have to keep trying harder and harder to be more offensive. So it's not just ooh-oh cunny anymore, it's ooh-oh sex, ooh-oh rape children, ooh-oh child pussy, ooh-oh rape children until they birth 10 more children and then rape those ones too. What does this have to do with Blue Archive? You already have websites where you can be a lowly gooner, you don't need to do it in the comments and replies of wholesome content from Blue Archive. Did you know about the death row meme? It's a joke in the Korean side of the community that states that Hoshino fans, that's me, are no good people for liking such a small body and deserve the death penalty. You make a joke like that on the global, and you'll have NPCs desperately trying to get you banned or doxxed within hours. Same thing with Ibuki. A meme on the JP side states, those who wink into Ibuki get the death penalty. You try to make that joke on global and you'll be mass reported in minutes. You know, we used to have jokes like that here on the American internet. They were the FBI open up memes. What happened to those, I wonder? Take a look for yourself at the replies and comment sections on the JP and KR sides of the community, and you'll see they display a bit more elegance in their conversation around the game. Let me show you a clear example of the difference. Here's a recent comic. Well, it's not that recent anymore, but this video has been in production for a long time. Anyways, Kisaki's morning routine. It was posted on the global YouTube account. Let's take a look at some of the top comments. Let's see, the most liked comment, the joke is porn. Again, the joke is porn. The joke is still porn. Let's take a look at some of the replies. Will, take a look at this. He's got some repliers saying, that's not the place for this. Not in the official. Yeah, no shit. And here is an example of the hardcore cope I've been talking about. Not in the official NA maybe. If it was JP or KR, then it's okay. A lot of low IQ people have this delusion that the eastern side of the community is all based and coom-pilled. Let's go ahead and shatter that illusion right now. Here's that exact same Kisaki comic posted on the Korean channel. All of the comments are wholesome. Even the one raunchy one about waking up next to Kisaki is written elegantly. The only virtue signal comment is in English. Are we seeing the difference in etiquette yet? JP hasn't posted this comic, so instead let's compare to this post of the Pandemonium Society in their swimsuits. Ibuki is dead center. Let's read the comments. The first and most liked comment is about Makoto. There's one that I can only assume is subtly pointing out Satsuki's fat tits. There's one praising Iroha, and more about Makoto. Oh, here we go. Ibuki is so cute. True. Isn't it interesting how you can say that without virtue signaling your allegiance to the Cunny Crusade? And if we keep going down the line, it's more and more appropriate comments. Here we have our first overly perverse comment. Surprise, surprise. It's from a retarded English-speaking fan. Come to stink up the JP community with their unfunny jokes. Oh, look, here's another one. And another one. They're all English-speaking fans. This is what we call NPC behavior. It's literally like in a video game when you walk up to an NPC and he speaks his scripted dialogue and then you drive around the corner to a completely different area and you can see another copy of that same NPC and he says the same dialogue. Completely interchangeable people who are worth nothing of value. They act purely based on outside stimuli and have no thoughts of their own. All they know is see thing, repeat dialogue, get likes. This is where the dead internet theory comes from. Highlander is such a good song. Let's check the comments and let's check his profile and every time. Every fucking time, huh? I don't want to be racist. You're making me racist. No, it's fine. The majority of Vietnamese people I've met in my life have been very impressive people. There were a lot where I grew up. They're not all like this. It's just like how the worst of American kids shoot up schools. The worst of Southeast Asian kids are overly excited for sex with little cartoon girls. It's not a big deal. We all have our faults. But come on, you're stinking up my community. None of the Japanese players are saying anything like this. Scroll through the comments, you won't find it. Obviously, you're a weeaboo, I can tell by your username, and your perception of Japanese culture is way off. They don't do this. A couple of viral tweets from a Korean pedophile does not represent Japanese culture. Are you stupid? Like, look at this shit. It's a literal, heart-melting art of a chibi toki taking a bite out of a takoyaki ball. I think that's what it is anyways. And getting sauce on her apron. And the retarded foreigner is compelled by the fucking god of Cunny. I have to make this about Cunny. I have to make this about sex with kids. I must. On this post, no one on JP's side acts like this. Why is he doing this? Because it's guaranteed likes. This is how you get clout from secondaries. Simply say the holy based words, and likes will be bestowed upon you. Let's look at even further proof. Anytime YouTube shoves one of those stolen art community posts in front of you, you can check the comments to see a recurring band of Taurus NPCs. I don't know where they find the time to comment on all of these community posts. OP usually has the source of the art linked. Simply follow the link to the source of the art and look at the comments there. Not a single Japanese soul makes comments like this. Even on literal porn. By the way, Japan makes up 72% of the game's revenue on its own. You are not the target audience. These guys are. This is how a real fan behaves. This is when I realized something. Do you guys remember weeaboos? Severely autistic people who act to replicate their misconceptions of Japanese culture filtered down to them through anime? Despite autism cases rising, I thought that type of person died out. But now I think I found them. These people who think Japan is all cunny and coom and invade Japanese spaces in hopes of validation from the superior Japanese man. That's exactly what this is. How embarrassing. Let's take a look at this video which came out recently. All it is Hikari and Nozomi running along with a few characters from different games. This video is from the guy who made all those crazy Blue Archive Halo graphic motions a while ago. His editing skills are incredibly impressive. Anyway, take a look at the comments and once again you'll see a pattern. Every single comment is normal, and the one single comment which is virtue signaling is in English. And it's the same guy we saw earlier, actually. The fact that you see the same names over and over kind of tells me it probably is somewhat of a vocal minority situation. On a global scale, it absolutely is. Another thing about seeing the same names over and over again, the amount of time it would take to comment on all these videos, you can tell that these people do nothing but goon at home all day. Totally pathetic. Right, here's the thing. When in Rome, you do as the Romans do. This is true in all aspects of life. When you join another community, you do as they do. Join the hobby, change the hobby. Very simple. When you go to the Japanese or the Korean side of the fandom, don't bring your virtue signal bullshit over there in hopes of validation. Does anyone remember the Limbus Company fans getting called out for being fucking annoying in Japanese spaces? This is how you look. And yes, both the JP and KR fandoms have highly perverted discussion boards if you look on the right websites. On the right websites. Not in the official fucking YouTube comments in the face of people who actually play the game. And not in the replies of an artist who's drawing something non-explicit. Time and a place for everything. Even on the forums of the JP Wiki, nobody's having dirty conversations like that. They're talking about the actual game. It's almost like they actually play it. You know, once upon a time, Global used to have a community like that. And it's not as if the Japanese and Korean internet don't have antis hating on the game. Of course, being a nerd for some gay little anime game is frowned on by the wider culture. And so is lolicon. But they don't allow themselves to be influenced to the point of changing how they present the game in a misguided attempt to filter people who didn't like the game anyway. I think everyone on the Japanese side understands and isn't afraid of the fact that the core of Sensei's character is the responsibility of adults. I recommend you read this article written by a fan through Google Translate to get an idea of the things which Japanese players are willing to say about the game, which seem entirely absent from the English-speaking internet. Okay, let's talk about the argument that Cunny is carrying the game. And here's an example of the exact words that someone said to me to argue this. And sometimes you'll see cope like this. When Hikari and Nozomi banner got released in JP, line go up. Wow, a game releases a new banner and the line goes up? Wow, I didn't know that. You're telling me this now for the first time. So if you're making the argument that Cunny is carrying the game, you might not realize that saying that implies that the game doesn't stand on its own and needs to be carried by something superficial, which I don't believe. Okay, but let's say that's true. I don't really agree with appealing to the lowest common denominator like that anyway. I could just replace Nexon for Games Workshop and Cute and Funny for a wider audience. That's not gatekeeping. I don't really give a shit how much money secondaries give to the game. Appealing to the wider audience for a paycheck is not based. But if we want to take the argument that whoever is paying the most are the true fans, regardless of how they engage with the game originally came out in Japan exclusively, where there's no such thing as a Cunny community. And Japan still accounts for a majority of the game's revenue. The game wasn't doing so well, but it was saved by the Bunny Catcher event, which was all bunny girls with huge tits. And Neru, but Asuna dwarfs Neru in terms of popularity anyway. And after that, the game's identity was solidified through Volume F, which was obviously all heavy-hitting story. I don't really see where the Cunny community comes in on any of that. Just because Nozomi is popular with tourists on Twitter and YouTube doesn't always translate to sales. It definitely doesn't translate to long-term player retention. We do have data on which characters are the most popular, besides just art. This account tracks how many characters have reached Bond 100 with any player. What it tells us is which characters have the most dedicated and maybe crazy fanbase. Now, Hikari and Nozomi don't have much, but they are very new. But as you can see, Yuka is very popular, Hoshino is popular, but there's one character which blows everyone else out of the water, and that is Misono Mika. The only character to break into triple digits and cleared it all the way up to 127 as of the time of this image. Next character behind her is Hina, who only has 84 spread across the 3 entire units, 2 of which have been in the game almost since it released. I'm telling you, this is Mika Archive. We've never had another banner as big as Mika's. But Nozomi and Hikari did good, so they're carrying the game. No, they fucking aren't. I'd love to call Mika fans tourists, but if they're reaching Bond 100, that takes a lot of work, even if they are just buying all the gift packages. Well, no amount of stats is going to convince someone who didn't make up their mind anyway. But you want to know what I actually think came the closest to being able to say it carried the game? It was actually the music. Now, obviously, the story and the character designs are literally S tier. And even though I personally really like the gameplay, I get that not everyone has a big enough brain for a tactical game. But when the game first came out in Japan, what I remembered spreading the word of the game most was the music-related memes. First, it was Unwelcome School. This little video has 10 million fucking views. And that's just this upload of it, of a video that's only 8 seconds long and was reposted endlessly. I'm more than sure that nobody really knows how many views this video has gotten. And funnily enough, arguably the biggest Blue Archive meme ever isn't even written into the Know Your Meme page at all. Fucking secondaries writing this shit. Anyway, of course, after Unwelcome School, Usagi Flap is extremely popular. Back when that song came out, you'd randomly hear it in unrelated YouTube shorts. It was everywhere. If you search Blue Archive on YouTube and sort by views, the first thing you get is Unwelcome School. Funnily enough, if you search Nikkei by views, you don't find Nikkei, you actually find Blue Archive Roblox. And also porn for some reason. Even Hwansong, the art director who unfortunately defected to Dynamis 1, said that the moment that he heard Ari Aroharu strengthened his desire for users to experience the excitement of progressing through the story along with the music. Personally, I hold music in seriously high regard. Music is so powerful, it can literally carry shit writing. I mean, just look at Nier Automata. Honestly, even if that game had no story, I still would have cried at the end, just because of the credits song. And so if there was one thing that would have gotten me to quit Blue Archive, it would have been Mitsukiyo defecting. Thank God that didn't happen. You know what's kind of funny is the most viewed Star Rail character trailer is the lowly one. So maybe it was MiHoYo who was actually carried by Cunny the entire time. Okay, let's talk about another controversy among the terminally online in the, quote, community. It's one that I know makes people really mad. I get why this one upsets people, but there's no excuse to believe lies. The issue we're talking about is Yuri and Yuri derangement syndrome. Terminally online people are really radicalized over this because they're worried about the fandom being ruined by Tumblr people. I understand that fear, but well, online Blue Archive discussion is already dominated by tourists. That's kind of the whole point of this video. So alphabet people don't really scare me. What are they gonna do? Spread lies and misreadings of the game to push their agenda? Yeah, that'd totally be novel in our community. Sarcasm. I am absolutely aware that crazy subversionists sort of tried to co-opt Yuri in recent years. But really, Yuri never was like a woke thing. It was always just a form of fan service that mostly appeals to male viewers. It's also a major staple of the moe and lolicon genres, which Blue Archive is a part of. No one in the JP community is threatened by it, nor is it absent from Blue Archive. I think Kaleideliner Prisma Ilia is one of the most popular, I guess what I'd call a lolicon anime, and it's completely Yuri, of course it is. Blue Archive is heavily inspired by Railgun and Girls and Panzer. Girls and Panzer has Yuri jokes, but romance is pretty absent. Railgun is explicitly Yuri, and it's still got a collab with Blue Archive. There's also the fact that Isaku-san, the retired main scenario writer for Blue Archive, who conceptualized most of the world, previously worked as the writer of a game called Curare Magic Library. And yep, it's Yuri. Looking at Blue Archive itself, Yuri jokes are not hard to find. Half of Akko's character is just thirsting over Hina. There's art of Hina with Akko on a collar in the official art book, as well as Akko daydreaming about Hina's daily activities. In the swimsuit OVA, Akko is overly excited about getting Hina into a swimsuit, and Hina tells her to shut up. Again, it's the same thing in the webcomics. During the Korean Taisai, the crowd mentions a tradition where a pair usually starts going out after the scavenger hunt. How could this recurring tradition not be a little bit gay if all the students are female? I mean, who else are they going to start dating? The animal people? Again, during the Korean Taisai, Hanako makes a joke about lewd things between students. During one of the onsen events, Meru makes a joke about drawing a raunchy scene in between. I think that would be Makoto and Hasumi. That's a bit of a strange pairing. Again, in one of the webcomics, we see Koharu getting a bit flustered over a perceived kabedon. And of course, Hanako is teasing Koharu any chance she gets. Yuri is not some dirty thing that Blue Archive shies away from, and no one on JP is offended by it. In fact, they take pleasure in it. After Mika held Nagisa so closely in one of the recent 3D animations, JP went wild for it. I get that some really annoying people can latch onto Yuri. Annoying people latch onto literally everything. If you want to gatekeep people, just do it on a case-by-case basis. Anyone who would lie about the game, harass people over headcanons, or confuse their delusions for reality should be kept out. But I mean, Blue Archive is already a gatekeeping failure, as most online discussion I see is done by pretend fans who don't play the game. Just like really weird cultist type people, and a lot of ignorant Zoomers. I've had friends who were legitimate players get harassed and mass reported over this by internet freaks. So yeah, Blue Archive is pretty much the same as all the other really bad online fandoms. Like MiHoYo or My Hero, even though it really pretends that it isn't. No one in Japan or Korea complains about Yuri. The Japanese aren't offended by Yuri because they aren't cucks. They understand how to separate fiction from reality. Yuri was already a part of the hobby long before these low IQ tourists colored in red started showing up. If you want it gone and you feel the need to enforce that on others, you're a tourist. Change the hobby, join the hobby. So does that mean Akko is gay or bi? No, Akko is just Akko. Akko's obsession exists for the pleasure of the viewer and isn't meant to be taken so seriously. I think this is what people call Yuri baiting. It's literally just in there because that's what people want to see. Yuri sells, and some people like that kind of fan service, so they throw it in. The only way you're getting some kind of homo confirmation would be in like some epilogue OVA released 10 years later that subtly supports the idea that two characters were gay while still leaving it open for interpretation. That's usually how these things go. Yuri has been a staple of the moe genre since long before many Zoomers gained consciousness. I understand if you're weary because you grew up in a world where woke has always attacked you, but this is not that. Do not let subversionists claim Yuri. That is exactly what they want. Yes, alphabet activists like the same things as sane people. That is always going to happen. If you give it up every time they attack instead of gatekeeping it from them in the first place, you will lose. If Yuri's against your religion, if it's haram, you should stop pretending to like this game. You definitely shouldn't be gooning to it. It's like, oh man, lefties like something. Now I have to abandon it. No, you absolute retard. You were supposed to gatekeep it. This is why I hate kids. They're so fucking dumb. You wonder why leftists keep attacking while you give up ground every time they make an inch. Because you're so invested in how you're perceived, you can't fully enjoy living. Now you can't enjoy any of these good anime because now leftists like them, and you don't want to be associated. Okay, retard. This is how you psyop yourself into being into shittier and shittier slop. A good example is the media literacy thing where leftists completely BTFO'd the online gamer right by convincing them that having a deeper understanding of text is cringe and left-wing. Bravo falling for that one, fucking retards. I've also heard people call Yuri degenerate, which is fucking hilarious if that's your argument. Yuri is degen and therefore bad. But harems of children are a-okay. You know, I can't think of a belief system where that checks out. Anyway, there's plenty of old harem anime that has Yuri and even yaoi in it. Anyone remember Naruto-san? Uber popular in Japan. The main heroine had Izuna's voice actor. Okay, now let me explain why arguing over Yuri is unironically communist subversion. I'm not saying it's literally a communist plot. It's just it plots perfectly onto the subversion process to destroy a community. It's really funny. Okay, take a look at this graphic. It's a transcription of Yuri Bezmenov's explanation of the communist subversion process. Here, I made a simplified version that applies to our current situation. Step 1. The objective is to co-opt a neutral interest within the community. In this case, Yuri, and politicize it. Do your best to conflate it with its extremes. Yuri is technically gay, so that means it's basically woke, right? You can use AstroTurfing to convince the community that Yuri is the enemy and trick them into a war with their fellow senseis over it. Yes, this happens. I've seen this happen. Now is the time for infighting. Now the old guard otaku who wish to consume Yuri in peace as they always have are conflated with alphabet activists and are attacked as woke sympathizers. Now trust and brotherhood within the community is completely eradicated, as the old guard in some cases begin to legitimately sympathize with the subversionists after being attacked by their own, further radicalizing both sides. Now that the demoralization process is complete, we can move to destabilization, where the fandom will be devastated by a major controversy relating to a divisive topic in the community, causing a total community meltdown. And now that the community has been successfully collapsed, there are two options. Either the commies take over and the whole community becomes lame and gay, or they leave the community to rot in a permanent state of discourse until EOS. Either way, the players lose. That last step of a major controversy may never happen, but even if it doesn't, that permanent state of discourse still leaves the community untouchable. You no longer have a community to gatekeep when no one can discuss the game. I'm not saying there's a secret cabal of commies deliberately coordinating and attacking Blue Archive. It's more like just a widespread learned behavior that happens on its own. It's decentralized. If you want to disagree on how to deal with it, that's fine. The West has been disagreeing about that for almost 100 years now. But you're not telling me it's not happening. Take a look at this. This is a long and retarded argument, but I wanted to pop out this bit. Nah, it's the Yuri tards. I'm fine with Yuri, but if you let them in once, they will corrupt the fandom. Fight fire with fire. Ugh, you can tell that these people are kids just from the way they type. So sad. So in the same breath, I'm fine with Yuri, but Yuri tards are the problem. Sir, that is not a solution to the problem. You're literally a couple steps down the purity spiral. If you're fine with Yuri, and I'm sure you consider yourself a sane person, why do you think it's okay to let outsiders oppress your hobbies and tell you what's too problematic? This is what a useful idiot looks like. It's a well-documented part of the human condition. Just stop letting people control you. It's already been proved that Yuri fan service exists within Blue Archive, and no one in the GP fanbase is offended by it. Don't let retards gaslight you just because BLT activists like it too. Look at Kaleideliner Prisma Ilias fandom. Look at Maho Ako. Explicitly Yuri shows, and yet no community controversies. It's almost like the people who like Yuri aren't the fucking issue. It's a very specific subset of social justice activist types who are only using Yuri as their skin suit to attack and are tricking people into attacking their own. We already had a word for this. It was wokeist or subversionists or commies or social justice activists. We didn't need to create a new word, Yuritard, which paints a broad stroke across the entire genre and plays right into their hand, yielding ground to them. If all Yuri is bad, well then Blue Archive is already lost. Fucking hilarious. Subversionists have completely pulled the wool over people's heads when it comes to Yuri, and the anti-Yuri crusaders have been utterly ideologically captured. A good example is what happened recently with Kin Zaibatsu, a Yuri artist. I remember the first time I saw this person's art like a year ago, I thought, oh no, they've got a vaguely Tumblr-adjacent art style, and they draw Yuri. This ain't gonna end well. Sure enough, I was right. So basically, she got attacked for drawing this. And yes, it is a she because only real women draw like this. Anyway, I'm not a big fan of Pride Month myself, but I still thought it was funny. The joke is pretty simple. Hanako is using Pride Month as an excuse to tease Koharu. This person is not a communist subversive. They have never once expressed any desire to change Blue Archive. They have, however, preemptively apologized and stated that they don't intend for their art to enforce anything on anyone. But that doesn't matter because Lenin's strongest soldier who wakes up every day exclusively to attack people over Yuri is here to save the day. Good work, comrade. So Kin's reaction was to quote tweet it and say, what's the problem? It's a game full of girls and has a character that makes Yuri manga. Yeah, that's true. No lies detected. Blue Archive is full of girls. And there is indeed a character who draws Yuri manga. And the devs play into Yuri all the time. Scroll down a bit and she says, muting this because I got accused as a pedo now. Yeah, that's pretty annoying. And here's the receipt. Kin said something stupid, which she blamed on her bad English, and clout-chasing pinks misconstrued that into, you're playing a game which you acknowledge is problematic. No, she didn't say that. She might not have worded her thought correctly, but she definitely didn't say that. And because reds are low IQ and can't read or think for themselves, they just follow the pinks' interpretation and attack for the glory of their queen. If I could try defending Kin for a second, when she says, I can't change the character's age, I think the words she was looking for were, it's not real, so it doesn't matter. She actually went on to say, I'm not against lolicons and I'm also not a pedo some of you are accusing me of. I'm not against sexualized drawings of the students because they're fictional. They don't age. I don't claim myself as a so-called high moral person. Oh, looks like I guessed right. That is exactly what she meant. So this is a reasonable person. This person has been ripped the fuck apart by wokies for liking the cursed game. But of course, none of that matters when you piss off the mob of brainless reds. One little slip-up in how you word things is enough to get you attacked from all angles by low IQ, clout-chasing monkeys. And yeah, sure, they were death threats, but people always bring up le death threats. Oh no, le death threats, and now I'm a victim. And I mean, I tell people to kill themselves all the time, so I personally don't care that much. But it's funny to see the same people who swear the evil mihoyotards who killed their mom and raped their dog need to be gatekept because they're so toxic. Meanwhile, they're the exact same type of people. They do the same thing. Death threats over a ship. Draw a character the wrong shade and the army of reds sieges your socials and attacks you. Actually, I think the one thing we did really well was the Yuri thing. If I can be honest, I think it's really obvious whether someone plays the game because they like it or for clout, just based on their stance on Yuri. The people constantly complaining about Yuri are always grifters. Social grifters, that is. Regardless of whether or not they get a Twitter blue payment out of it, the real reward is the internet points and ego boost from having the epic and based opinions and for dunking on the lowest hanging fruit imaginable. Generally, they're always just in it for culture war points and looking to apply their specific worldview to this community. But lately, anytime I see someone seething in the replies of Yuri art, they do actually get shit on. So I think we've improved on this issue. Good job, guys. People really want Blue Archive to track onto the culture war in a specific way, but it just doesn't. Because Blue Archive isn't that kind of game. The appeal of Blue Archive is Blue Archive and everything contained within it. It's not an anti-man, anti-patriarchy uprising against the capitalists, nor is it an epic anti-woke based incel harem fantasy game. And that really makes people mad. If you dare say that, people's brains break and they instantly go into virtue signal mode. Look, if you want games like that, you have options. But Blue Archive isn't one of them. The game tells you what it's about. The story of our youth and school days. The responsibility of adults is a constant theme. And never ever giving up on the students is another one. Look, I'm not one of those, the culture wars, the distractions, smartasses. Culture is important. I prefer certain cultures to other, and I might go to war over maintaining the ones I like. Figuratively. But Blue Archive is not really a game that imposes anything. It's got fan service and extremely ridiculously good and cute character designs. The best character designs. That's about the extent of the culture war in the game, that the characters should be attractive, as they have been since anime began. But it's less of a harem game than Persona, considering you can't actually date any of the characters. Nor do all of them even show that kind of affection for you. Oh sure, they get flustered in the Momotalks, but who wouldn't when talking to Chad Thundercock himself? Is that really love? I think those Momotalk supremacists are really funny. You know, the people who are only concerned with whether or not you read your Momotalks. I'm thinking if you only talk about Momotalks, you're probably a secondary. I've said something to this extent before in my old shitty Blue Archive video, but I'm gonna double down now. That's like the easiest target for a secondary to use to call someone a tourist, on the basis of something actually in the game. Because it's all they have. If some max level guy speaks out of turn, unread Momotalks are the first thing they grab onto to call him a tourist. Honestly, I think it's more suspicious if you have 0 unread Momotalks, because then you're probably just skipping them for Prioxin. If someone has like 100 unread Momotalks, you know that there's someone who couldn't bear to skip them despite the big incentive to do so. I would rather go without free Prioxin than disrespect one of my students to such a degree that I skip their Momotalk just because I don't have the time. As much as we can try to grandstand, let's not pretend like everyone loves all their students equally. So some Momotalks are gonna get prioritized over others. But it's always some level 60 secondary who's like, the tourist hasn't read his Momotalks. Not a single maxed out student, but at least I read the Momotalks. Yeah, you're 10 fucking Momotalks because you have no students. You didn't do the Bond story? That's my criteria for tourism. It's purely if you did every Bond story. You know, the lowest effort part of the game from both the player and developer perspective. It's funny how no one remembers that when the game first came out, the devs half-assed the Momotalks. A lot of those early Bond stories are so poorly written and incredibly short, and when the game came out, many characters didn't even have live 2Ds. It's so obvious that the devs completely half-assed them because not even they saw them as important. After all, from a developer perspective, they're the one thing which requires 0 player investment. As long as you've got the character, you can watch your Bond if you keep inviting them to the cafe. No narrative investment, no power check, 0 gameplay involved. Look, you should do the Bond stories, but I'm sorry, it's not very impressive that you did. I guess now we can get into a bit of fandom shit and talk about character hate. This is another one of those things that really shows, yeah, we're just the same as any other online fandom. Hating characters is definitely a bit silly to me. Of course, Sensei is supposed to take care of all of his students. But beyond that, from the perspective of a reader, I love all the characters, even the villains. It's just a really great cast all around. I guess people don't like certain characters because they find their fans really annoying. And honestly, I think they post hoc rationalize their hate by trying to find ways in which the character is apparently poorly written to justify their hate. But it's just an illusion, they just don't like the people who like those characters. I'm not really sure because I don't hang around the hateful side of the community, but I guess the most hated character is probably Hina, because of her fans. I mean, I've never really seen a Hina fan ever be annoying, but again, I don't hang around the terminally online internet circles, because I honestly think it's kind of gay, and there's a lot of kids. If I could talk about Hina's writing, when it comes to her relationship with Hoshino, it's literally peak fiction. The supposed strongest in Kivotos in reality had a low self-esteem and compares herself to a lazy girl from a ghetto town. Hina thinks Hoshino is so much stronger than her because she never gives in. But she's unaware of just how broken Hoshino really is as a person. It's such a good dynamic, and it comes to such an amazing conclusion. But I guess I can admit that Hina's relationship with Sensei seems a bit ham-fisted. It's like she shows up in Volume 1, meets Sensei, and they barely speak. Then in Volume 3, all of a sudden Sensei's like, "You're the one I trust most, Hina." Like, what the fuck are you talking about, dude? Did you just lie to her? I think he did just to make her feel better. He's a master of telling people what they need to hear most. Which is okay, I guess. But why does she care so much about Sensei's approval in the first place? I feel like there's a lot of missing context about Sensei gaining Hina's trust because, like, it never happens in-game. Hoshino doesn't trust Sensei at all when they meet, so why does Hina? Maybe we need a prequel story about Gehenna to explain this. Besides Hina, I'll see Kokuriko and Akemi get hate. Akemi because she's the polar opposite of a loli, and Kokuriko because she's not a kid. Well, I mean, if you only want more lolis, and you're wondering, why are there non-lolis in my loli game? I can see why you might not like them. Well, I've never been a giant muscle lady enjoyer, so Akemi doesn't really appeal to me, but her character is still enjoyable, cute, and also funny. And for Kokuriko, well, if you actually care about the story, she's a big deal, and it's really interesting. I mean, a full adult with a halo? Who knew? I did, actually, because I already knew you could keep your halo into adulthood just by analyzing the story, lol. But it's nice to be vindicated. Anyway, you shouldn't be hating on the characters. What kind of fandom and failure of a sensei nonsense is that? Let's talk about how the community got to this point in the first place. Well, this is what happens when you don't gatekeep. We let all these low-trust people into the community without vetting them, and this is what we get. When it comes to online discussion about gachas, this guy puts it well. He mentions that the outward fanbase you see is not truly representative of the community. I believe this is accurate and can be observed by the fact that you will see the same usernames over and over again. For a lot of these people, their daily routine is wake up, watch Cunny Slop, comment on every single one, because you'll see them on every single video. It's literally impossible to have enough time in the day to be able to masturbate to hentai, comment on all these videos as soon as they come out, and play Blue Archive if you have any kind of ambition, hobbies, a job. The other thing is that social media is just totally designed to reward irresponsibility. Especially X, the quote tweet system, the character limit, the way the algorithm rewards outrage farming. Twitter is and was always designed in a way that intrinsically limits any kind of intelligent discussion, and unfortunately, it has become our main way of leaving public messages. Of course, the community would get like this because no one with a job has time to tweet all this shit. Only boring people who have nothing going on. This is what happens when you let too many tourists get a big head. Okay, I want to take a look at Google search trends just to confirm the demographic of who is playing the game. See this spike? This is Swimsuit Hoshino's banner. See this spike? This is Mika's banner. This little continuous part here is the airing of the anime, ending with a spike that is Dress Hina. Right, so now let's add another data point. Here's Genshin Impact's search trends. Notice how the enshittening of the Blue Archive community commences as Genshin Impact trends downwards. And with the release of the Blue Archive anime lowering the barrier to entry even further, all the while Genshin loses popularity, Blue Archive has become a refugee camp for the most annoying people on Earth. If you're having trouble reading the graph, just pay attention to where the red line touches the gray line, and you'll see the pattern of the trend. One interesting detail is that these trends are even more pronounced in Southeast Asian regions. Let's take a look at some charts. Hi, Rinny. With this chart officially provided by the devs, we can get an idea of the demographic makeup for the community. The first three regions don't speak English, so they don't affect us. At the end here is where it gets interesting. The US and Indonesia. I'm willing to bet that the Philippines or Vietnam is up next. You might think, wow, Indonesia is right behind the US? That must mean like a majority of Indonesians play the game. No, not exactly. Indonesia's population is more than 80% the size of the US. So actually them being right behind the US is statistically expected. They do have a lot less land though, so I feel bad for them. Taking a look at Google search trends, we can compare the popularity of Blue Archive to other gacha games within certain regions. Remember how I mentioned Nikkei, Girls Frontline, Granblue, Azure Lane never had any of these community problems? No one's crying about ships or engagement farming off retards in those communities. It has nothing to do with lolis or fan service. Remember, all of these games have scantily clad lolis. Well, if you notice, in Southeast Asian regions, Blue Archive is much more popular than any non-miHoYo game. But in the US, it's Nikkei that's more popular. In both cases, Girls Frontline is relatively unpopular. Now compare with another Western country like the United Kingdom. Or even somewhere poor like Mexico. Same deal as the US, Nikkei has most of the interest when compared to Blue Archive. So, no shade on the Southeast Asians, but you can't just blame everything on the West, when statistically more Western fandoms are generally better. So any meme you see that says something like this, Western BA fandom. That's fucking cope because the West has more interest in all these other lolicon games and yet has none of the constant fandom controversies, harassment, or people lying about the game the way Blue Archive does. There is one connecting factor among all low IQ Blue Archive engagement farming, and as usual, it's the flags in their bios. They should be easy to notice because half of all the commenters on Cunny posts are like absolutely struggling to speak English. Often you'll see them with Arabic or Vietnamese letters in their name or something, until they get called out enough times and change them to Kana in an attempt to replicate the superior form of Asian man which they worship. Because they're weebs. It's literally a reincarnation of Bob's Vagana, but with nerds. Hey, I'm just saying communities which are primarily Western don't have to deal with this shit. So I'm sorry to say, I love my Southeast Asians, but most of the tourists are coming from you guys' countries. Just looking at the stats and the pattern among communities. The same regions where Twitter blue payouts make the biggest difference. You may want to take pride in the idea that your region only cares about Cunny and nothing more, but I don't think you'd be doing your culture justice with that. It's not the whole country, it's just the worst of their nerds. The worst of the American nerds shoot up schools. The worst of the Japanese nerds murder their favorite idols. And the Southeast Asian nerds are obsessed with Cunny to an unhealthy extent, I guess. If you still don't believe me, which I bet you do, but take a shot every time you see a Reddit tier Cunny joke from a Southeast Asian or Arabic username, and you'll be dead in minutes. I promise you. There's no point in denying it. People like to blame everything on Americans or Westerners. Yeah, I get that we stir up shit on other countries all the time. My bad, yo. But is it okay for me to just once be like, this actually ain't us? Am I allowed to say that? It's not to say that it's all the Southeast Asian nerds, obviously. It's more like the opposite. I'd call it a loud minority. Especially considering a lot of them aren't playing the game at all. I think the majority of creators in the Blue Archive community on YouTube are Southeast Asian, usually Indonesian, and most of them aren't making slop. They're actually making videos a lot better than mine. They've got really talented people. I don't think any of them are going to like me after this video, but Inoue and Astryminal's videos have way higher production than mine. Hell, even my 3D model from the beginning of this video is made by an Indonesian. Their country is beautiful, and even has some of the oldest ancient structures known to man on it. I'd love to visit sometime, but every time I see one of those unfunny memes or utterly retarded comments from someone who thinks they're a lot smarter than they are, in barely readable broken English, from a dude with an Asian Muslim or Arabic username, I just want to blow my fucking brains out. I'm kidding. You know I love my Islamic brothers, inshallah. Hey, I know every Muslim sect is different, but from what I know about the Quran and Muhammad and his wives, paired with the fact that the people saying the dirtiest shit tend to come from some kind of Muslim country, are they just joking? Maybe it's just a cultural difference. It's always some Muslim dude to come out of the woodwork and go, sex with children, Cunny, I need to see 11-year-olds give birth. That's nasty, bro. Oh no, I'm kink shaming. There was a time where Black Hive was more to the fans than just a source of porn. I guess all those guys were scared away, so now all we've got are the secondaries who are never really into it. It's like, holy shit, bro, can I have one single post about the game go by without someone virtue signaling over it? It's so cringe. Let's not get too racist though, because I know it's not all the Southeast Asians or Muslims. Since a lot of them are pretty talented, it seems to be a very specific, very loud group of them, which are amplified by social media. Hey, we have those types of people in America too. The people who talk about shit publicly online and leave comments are always going to be a different breed than everyone else. But when you go to in-person events like conventions, you'll see the real grassroots people are entirely different. People are a lot more reasonable in person. So I don't know what it is about Southeast Asian culture. Well, I have a few ideas. I'm sure in part it's an inverse reaction to woke politics imported from the West. If that's the case, sorry, technically our fault, but it's no excuse for being a retard. I've already shown JP doesn't act like this, KR doesn't act like this. You know, you're not replicating the superior based Japanese man. It's a barbaric approximation based on an illusion projected onto them. Being a retard in places where people want to actually talk about the game is called trolling in Japan. It's not gatekeeping either. Lying about the game is not gatekeeping, it's subversion. Misrepresenting Kirino's relationship line as a legal argument that sex with children would be okay in a hypothetical kivotos is not gatekeeping, it's a glow-up. It completely undermines the lowly argument. In misrepresenting the game as extremely explicit What's really about as lewd as Grand Blue is the easiest way to out yourself as a tourist. What happened to classy weebs? Can we bring those back? I need more guys with fedoras, bowler hats, and katanas. You know what else is highly popular in Southeast Asia? Genshin Impact. And its drop in players compared to the rise of Blue Archive is even more pronounced in those regions, further proving that it's the Hoyo fans who got bullied out of their community, likely by Westerners, sorry again, who have jumped the ship to Blue Archive. This is further evidenced by Hoyotards being their number one concern. Anytime you disagree with one, you're a Hoyotard, you must be. These people are traumatized by what the other Hoyo fans did to them. And in that case, I do feel bad for them. But don't bring that MiHoYo behavior over here. I've never played any MiHoYo shit in my life, and I'm just wondering why my community is constantly seething about another community instead of discussing its own game. So yes, I'm blaming this on MiHoYo fans. And Blue Archive tourists who are closet MiHoYo fans. Maybe I'm contributing to gacha tribalism, but it's also young Zoomers and low-functioning autistic people with too much internet access. If you remember, for years, it's always been the MiHoYo fans who are constantly being called pedophiles online. So now they're bringing their adversity and inability to think for themselves here. Much of the community's recent cringe stems from the wider online community's inability to understand Japanese comedic nuance, or even lack thereof, as well as a complete ignorance of otaku culture, which is what Blue Archive is primarily based on. The otaku generation of Japanese people who made Toho memes and watched Haruhi in their teens are an aging group, and Blue Archive is targeted towards these adults. That's why Japan accounts for almost 3/4 of the game's revenue, or sometimes more. And that's why the character designs are so tame in Moe compared to other games, and why the story has adult themes of responsibility and the pure biological impulse to protect the fictional characters. The Korean dev team literally studied decades of otaku culture in order to very carefully craft Blue Archive's world, and the result is a game that many Japanese people have claimed cured their anti-Korean sentiment. So a foreign Zoomer just isn't going to get it unless they somehow had access to the Japanese memes or browsed Nico Nico Doga as a little one. Like I said earlier, what we are witnessing is a new form of weeaboos, severely autistic people projecting their illusory values onto a foreign country. It's also a general denial of reality due to echo chambers and general adversity among people online today. The troublesome global community sees Blue Archive as a culture war battleground, so they need to exclaim their allegiance with every post they make. There's also the issue of the purity spiral. The purity spiral is a groupthink phenomenon that occurs when the group runs out of outsiders to oppose, and instead looks inward and begins to rip itself apart with over-policing. Basically, after the fake Blue Archive fans gatekept the alphabet activists, and they ran out of people to grift against, they turned against each other and actual fans minding their own business. Let me show you an excerpt from a DM I had with a Twitter friend from over a year ago. And yep, that was my unfiltered opinion on virtue signaling coon posters a year ago. You ever wonder why there's no more funny people in the Blue Archive community? It's because they all got banned by mass reports for the slightest of dissents, like maybe the impregnating children joke isn't as funny the 100th time, or maybe Yuri can be hot. And they don't come back because, unlike me, they have much better things to do than scrap with retarded children over the internet. And of course people are going to say filtered, but we already know that's complete cope. There's no point in filtering someone with child pregnancy memes if that's not what the game is about. What that is enforcing your headcanons on other people. Classic Hoyo fan behavior. If you've actually played the game, you would know it isn't actually about impregnating children. No, it's not a retelling of the Quran. It couldn't be further from that. If this was Sex with Children archive, I'd say, okay, he got gatekept, he doesn't want to impregnate kids. He got filtered, that's fine. But it's not. It's Blue Archive, a game about the story of our youth and school days and the responsibility of adults. Something that I guess is just impossible for young Zoomers to understand as of now. I've seen so many unfathomably based real patriots get their accounts suspended by brown white supremacist wannabes that I'm actually to the point where I think I'd rather just deal with the Tumblr people and dunk on them myself the right way. Many people do want to push woke shit into games and make them all lame and gay. That is a legitimate problem. But I don't think a game made by a bunch of young South Korean men is going to fall prey to that, unless it's literally a government mandate. In the gaming culture war, people fall into this trap where they get caught in a pissing contest of trying to be edgier than those that they oppose in an attempt to haze them. Generally, the less properly socialized someone is, the more time they're going to spend trying to haze each other over online games they don't actually play. Here's a good example. Neither of these people play Blue Archive. Both are virtue signaling for likes, and their only investment is pissing each other off. In this retard-to-retard communication, there's only a net loss of brain cells. You know, there is a character in the game who's meant to represent this type of person. There's a reason why Underground Dweller's name can also be translated as Basement Dweller. Here's a graphic to explain it. In the middle are the people who actually play Blue Archive, the reasonable JTF mobs. At the fringes are the grifters who want to fight each other over it. On the right are the spiteful and gay antis who throw false accusations and want to spread chaos. And on the left are the people who only exist to fight antis, but make no mistake, the people on the left don't give a shit about Blue Archive or the community either, as they've shown when they were more than willing to jump ship to Project KV at a moment's notice. They have no loyalty to Blue Archive. Their only purpose is to sling shit over the internet, and they're very salty that they lost to the antis in the battle over Genshin, a game which is actually only good for the porn. They lie to themselves and pretend like they're protecting the community, while constantly attacking anyone slightly less insane than them. Yeah, we don't need your protection, you mouth-breathing retards. You haven't gatekept a single thing. I know a majority of people are going to absolutely hate this video for one reason or another. Either I'm a racist right-winger because I did a little too much noticing in this video, or I'm an ignorant fence-sitter because I dare to have a nuanced opinion based in reality, which is backed up by evidence in the JP and KR fandoms, instead of just barbaric tribalism. I don't know what I expected. This is just par for the course of any online fandom. Blue Archive is not special. It's just funny how this time we crafted this illusion of supreme gatekeeping as we burned down the community from within. Probably some of the most impressive subversion by tourists I've ever seen. Bravo. Please, just let people play the fucking game and stop projecting your delusions onto people. So how do we fix this issue? I don't know. Fuck it. It's just a mobile game fandom. It's not a big deal. Let it balkanize. Okay, well, you could just try being racist. Hey, it works. You don't actually have to be racist. Just say racist shit and they'll back off. They respond really well because it's a language they understand. That's how we communicate on the internet. Okay, I'm kidding. Being racist is bad and gets us nowhere, obviously. But it is really funny to BTFO a supremacist LARPer with statistics about their own country. If you really want to fix the community, the main point of this video is to bring light to the irony and the fact that the community is under the spell of believing it's hardcore gatekept when in reality, the English-speaking online presence of the game is dominated by people who don't play the story, don't actually like the game, don't like the gameplay, constantly lie about the game, only like the porn, literal secondaries, the same people we'd be bullying for not being able to 1cc a decade ago. I think waking up to that is what's most important. If you have a better idea on how to fix the community, let me know. But I don't think anyone's gonna say that. The community is too far gone and only extreme measures to correct it will be effective. What we really need to do is pass laws that limit social media use to an hour a day for anyone under 18 or doesn't have a job. Oh wait, that wouldn't work because most of these people aren't in America. Well then, we need to build a wall around the internet. We need Elon to put a region lock on Twitter so that only the civilized world can enjoy video games in peace. I'm kidding. There's plenty of good Southeast Asian players, it's not all of you. Well, if we can't do that, we need Maxor to make a video about the game that shows the game for what it really is. A silly little heart-wrenching story about youth and responsibility with both fan service and action. This will send an influx of normies into the community and cause a massive fandom war, which might lead to an actual resolution. At least the new people might actually be interested in playing the game. I really don't give a shit whether or not they want to jerk off to the characters or not. Chances are they do. But all I want is more people to actually discuss the game with. After almost 4 years, I'm so fucking bored of coom humor and rage bait from tourists. I just want people to actually talk about the game with. Maxor, save the Blue Archive community. No way he would like this video. Anyway, no matter how you label me, the truth will always be that I am a real Blue Archive fan who plays the game, reads the story, and participates in discussion, and is able to separate fiction and headcanon from reality and truth. You can't dismiss me as a tourist. I know you don't play the game. I know you're lying. Hyperborea edits don't work on me. I know where you live. If you don't even play the game, you're not a real fan. You're a tourist, and you know who you are. I tried my best to formulate a comprehensive argument exposing the hypocrisies, falsehoods, and ignorance of those who pretend to or play Blue Archive performatively. Even after this video became so long, I feel that I've left so much left unsaid because I just couldn't figure out how to fit it in the script. Some things work better as their own videos, but I'm not gonna make a fucking series of videos bullying retards on the internet over a mobile game. I just want my community back. So, this is what I got. Thanks for watching.
I'm on a mission to protect every single child in the whole wide world. That means I am in the right. Anyone who opposes me is a big pedophile and a gross fetishist.